Chapter 621, 3 Requests. Then finally, there will be the professional group that includes wizards in grades 6 and 7. The arrangements for students at this stage will be more specialized, Anduin continued, ignoring Snape's intense stare. As we all know, wizards in grades 6 and 7 are nearly graduates. Some have even started internships or interviews outside the school after passing the OWL, ordinary wizarding level, exams. For the remaining subjects in the 5th grade, we will only accept students with grades above E and set up special classes to help them complete the ultimate wizard exam. However, since the tactical training school is just starting next school year, there is no assessment for the 5th grade students. Therefore, I want to give the students of these 2 grades a chance to choose independently. Anduin then took out another large stack of parchment, divided it into quarters, and handed it to the 4 deans. This is the application form for the willingness to study tactical training. Please inform the students in grades 6 and 7 at the start of the semester so they can decide whether they want to take this course, Anduin added. What about your selection criteria? Can everyone choose this course? How will they know if they should choose it? Professor McGonagall asked, puzzled. The tactical training courses for grades 6 and 7 will be very challenging. I will teach them standard tactical subjects, high-intensity battlefield simulation, conventional tactical actions, tactical maneuvers, coordinated combat tactics, wilderness survival, and the use of tactical equipment, Anduin explained. To put it simply, I will train them according to the requirements of reserve aurors. So, please inform them that if they aim to become aurors in the future or consider it as a career choice, they should consider taking my subject. Anduin's expression remained neutral, as if what he had just described was easy. However, all the wizards around, including Dumbledore, couldn't help but frown slightly. Although it seemed like anyone could choose this course, the subject sounded overwhelming. Could the students handle it? They are only 1 or 2 years away from graduation. Can they digest your teaching content? To be honest, according to your curriculum, I fear that few will pass. After all, your subject has just been introduced to Hogwarts. Can the requirements not be so high initially? Professor McGonagall asked, frowning. Her concern was clear. These students were not blank slates. It would be fine if they were taught gradually from lower grades, but for those in grades 6 and 7 who are new to this class, keeping up with Anduin's pace might be impossible. For students about to graduate, new subjects are usually just burdensome. I don't have the habit of lowering my standards, Anduin replied firmly. I want to set high standards for the students who enter the professional class. Real aurors can pass the assessment after a few months of intensive training. Why can't they? And if they really can't handle these subjects, they don't have to take my class, Anduin added with a sneer. But they need to know one thing. Once they pass my final exam, they will receive an Auror Professional Examination Certificate. With this certificate, they can directly join the Aurors in the Ministry of Magic or the Magic Congress of Britain, France, Germany, and the United States. And with Moody's continuous promotion and training, more and more ministries of magic will accept my standard. This means that even if they graduate normally, if they want to apply for the position of Auror, they must undergo the same set of vocational training. So, if they want to become Aurors, they can't avoid these subjects, Anduin concluded. And even if they fail the final assessment with me, they can at least lay a certain foundation for these subjects. This will give them an advantage over other wizards when applying for an Auror position in the Ministry of Magic in the future. Everyone fell silent after hearing Anduin's words. They knew he was right. Since Moody retired from the Legal Enforcement Department, this irascible old man, who couldn't relax, accepted Anduin's re-employment offer and became the head of Silver Flash Trading Company, serving as a full-time tactical instructor. He then followed Anduin to promote tactical training in various countries, focusing on basic subjects based on training methods for wizard schools. For the Ministry of Magic, they promoted the professional standards outlined in the book Tactical Training. Now, the law enforcement departments of Britain, France, Germany, and the United States have all received professional training from Anduin or Moody. This is why Anduin also serves as an Auror instructor for the Ministry of Magic in many countries. He is the authority in training Aurors, so if one wants to become an Auror in the future, they will likely have to pass his rigorous standards. Well, if that's the case, let those young wizards make the decision, Dumbledore said. He didn't think it was a bad idea, and hoped that by inviting Anduin back, he could teach the young wizards some self-defense methods. Although Anduin's approach seemed a bit excessive, it was better than not learning anything at all. After receiving Dumbledore's approval, Anduin nodded in satisfaction and continued, "In addition to the curriculum arrangements for wizards in each school year, there are 3 things on my side that need everyone's consent." "What else is there? Why is your subject so troublesome?" Snape curled his lips in displeasure. But Flitwick, standing next to him, chimed in, "Anduin is asking for our opinion, which is better than just going his own way without saying anything." Then Flitwick looked at Anduin with a smile. "Just say what you need. It's good to have more new things at Hogwarts." "Actually, it's nothing major," Anduin smiled lightly. "First of all, my course has a lot of outdoor practical content, so I hope to build teaching equipment in an outdoor area as a playground for practical classes. I've already scouted a location between Hagrid's hut and the Owl Hut, and I hope to have Hagrid as my teaching assistant during the practical lessons." Hagrid's hut to the Owl Hut? The straight-line distance between those 2 places is at least a few kilometers. Does your course need such a large range of activities? Can it be done directly in the central courtyard of the school, which is used as the venue for flying lessons? "It's enough," McGonagall said, puzzled by Anduin's request, and then suggested. "Although the space in the central courtyard is not small, it serves as a playground for flying lessons and a place for many young wizards to rest and entertain. The facilities I want to assemble are semi-permanent, and doing so will take up their space and won't look aesthetically pleasing," Anduin explained. "Additionally, the area I need is not really that large. Some subjects require a wider space, but I will limit the main activity area between Hagrid's hut and the circular stone pile." The circular stone pile is between Hagrid's hut and the Owl Hut, meaning the area Anduin wants to use is only a bit over 1 kilometer. McGonagall nodded to Dumbledore after considering it. "Well, I have no objection to Anduin's request." "It is indeed a very basic request, and I don't see any issue with it," Dumbledore agreed, seeing no objections from the others. "Thank you very much for your understanding." Anduin nodded slightly to express his gratitude, and then continued, "As for the second point, I hope the school can grant me access to the Forbidden Forest. I need to take students to the periphery of the Forbidden Forest for some practical classes. Of course, I assure everyone that I will ensure the safety of the young wizards." "The Forbidden Forest?" Upon hearing Anduin's request, the expressions of the deans turned serious. Snape frowned and asked, "Do you understand how dangerous the Forbidden Forest is? It is home to numerous high-risk magical creatures and humanoid colonies like centaurs and trolls. Encountering them is no trivial matter." "Don't worry," Anduin replied confidently. "Dealing with various magical animals and intelligent creatures is part of the tactical training curriculum. Not every grade will be exposed to such high-risk subjects. The main focus will be on 5th to 7th year students." He paused and then added with a smile, "Moreover, I have a good relationship with the centaur community in the Forbidden Forest. They won't harm the young wizards." Dumbledore pondered for a moment before looking up at Anduin. "I heard from the centaur elder, Brandwadden, that you have some sort of agreement with the centaur tribes in the Forbidden Forest. Are you certain you can manage them?" "I didn't expect you to know Brandwadden as well," Anduin said, nodding with a smile. "Yes, they are the leather suppliers for Silver Flash Trading Company, and I am acquainted with most of the centaurs in the settlement. They won't trouble the young wizards entering the Forbidden Forest." "All right," Dumbledore finally conceded after some hesitation. "You may conduct classes in the Forbidden Forest, but you must not venture too deep. Hagrid will accompany you each time, and if any accidents occur, I will immediately revoke your permission to use the Forbidden Forest for practical lessons." "No problem," Anduin agreed, understanding that this was Dumbledore's maximum concession. He knew that once the students entered the Forbidden Forest, they would quickly learn the meaning of constant vigilance. Finally, Anduin laughed after confirming these two requirements. Since tactical training involves a lot of emergency avoidance and crisis management, to improve the safety of Hogwarts and ensure the well-being of the young wizards, I propose conducting a school-wide safety drill every school year. End of this chapter. Chapter 622, Harry, seeking monthly recommendation ticket. What? Safety drill? What's that? Several deans and Dumbledore exchanged puzzled glances upon hearing Anduin's words. It was clear from their expressions that none of them understood what he meant by exercise. Is there something wrong with you? Haven't you heard of it? Hogwarts and Gringotts are the two safest places in the UK. There is no need for so-called security drills here. We have our guards, and even more importantly, we have Dumbledore. Snape scolded, clearly dissatisfied with Anduin's increasing assertiveness. Oh, really? Anduin smiled slightly. Then I may have to tell you some bad news. A year ago, Gringotts commissioned Silver Flash to conduct a comprehensive security inspection. We performed a simulated crime exercise back then. What do you think the final result was? Anduin looked at Snape with a smile, making him feel uneasy. You can even invade a place as safe as Gringotts? Before Snape could react, Dumbledore looked at Anduin with a surprised expression. Not bad. Anduin nodded slightly. We conducted 2 tests on Gringotts, an assault and an infiltration. Gringotts failed to withstand both exercises. Facts have proven that with proper preparation, a wizard of ordinary Auror level can sneak into Gringotts silently and carry out thefts in the middle and shallow vaults. 5 bold and careful wizards can even infiltrate the deep vaults, commit burglary, and escape unscathed. It is precisely for this reason that Gringotts has recently accepted a comprehensive security upgrade from us. Some problems will not be exposed without a real test. The security drill is not solely aimed at the students. Professors are also within the scope of the test. Anduin smiled complacently. He hadn't even taken direct action against Gringotts. He had merely seconded a few Aurors from the Ministry of Magic to complete a series of operations. The goblins were astounded when they discovered that the heavily guarded vaults had been emptied. Such a big thing happened. Why is there no word about it? Are you lying to us? Snape looked at Anduin suspiciously, finding it hard to believe. Anduin smiled slightly. How could the goblins of Gringotts spread such a shameful thing? All parties involved in the exercise were given a gag order. Additionally, I hope everyone here will not go out and talk nonsense. Even if you do, Gringotts will definitely not admit it. He then turned to Dumbledore. Principal, do you think this request can be accepted? Huh? Dumbledore, who had been deep in thought, was taken aback when Anduin suddenly addressed him. I have no objection, but how do you plan to conduct this safety drill? It shouldn't cause a real safety hazard, right? It would be bad if someone were injured during the drill, Dumbledore quickly added. Don't worry, it's just some basic exercises. As for the specific content, please allow me to keep it a secret. The effectiveness of such exercises relies on their suddenness, and the time, place, and events must be kept confidential. Anduin's eyes twinkled with a slight smile, leaving it unclear whether he was being entirely forthright. Then let's proceed. Hogwarts has indeed been at ease for too long. It is necessary for everyone to have some sense of crisis. Dumbledore nodded after making eye contact with the other deans. He agreed, though he seemed somewhat distracted. That's good. The above is all the content I wanted to report to you today. However, because my current work at the Ministry of Magic is not yet finished, my return to school may be delayed, but I will definitely arrive before September 1st. I hope you understand. Please bear with me. Anduin nodded apologetically to everyone. After the meeting, Dumbledore hurriedly called Hagrid away, as if there was something urgent to discuss. On the other side, Anduin was taken away by Professor McGonagall, who wanted to familiarize him with her office and the theory classroom. Speaking of which, Dumbledore did treat Anduin very preferentially. The school allocated him a high-standard personal office on the 5th floor of the main tower. The location, space, and decoration were impeccable, and the standard was second only to the 4 major offices, the dean's offices and the principal's office. Anduin, this used to be the office of Professor Mells, who taught defense against the dark arts. She chose to retire after the mysterious man graduated and cursed this position, because the successors after that had, how should I put it, very short tenures. Most of them were assigned to temporary offices. So this place was vacant, but the house elves still kept it very clean. I hope you like it, McGonagall explained as she led Anduin into the office. Thank you, Professor McGonagall. I'm very satisfied here. I didn't expect to see the Black Lake directly from the window. It's such a wonderful view. Anduin smiled, admiring the scenery with great interest. He did not expect that one day he would return to Hogwarts as a professor. As long as you like it, McGonagall smiled and moved to Anduin's side. She had always admired this former student. Whether it was about the German Ministry of Magic or the secrets of Sirius Black, she knew something about it. In her eyes, Anduin had always cared deeply about his friends and valued his relationships. Anduin, Dumbledore should have told you that, child. He will also enter school this year, McGonagall murmured softly, looking into the distance with an unknown meaning. You mean Harry? Anduin nodded thoughtfully. Speaking of which, I haven't seen him for 10 years. I wonder how the kid is doing now. When I placed Harry back then, I had some understanding of his growth environment. His situation may be more complicated. McGonagall was silent for a moment before continuing. After you see him again, I hope you won't blame Dumbledore. He is also thinking about Harry's safety. What do you mean? Anduin frowned slightly. Was there a problem with Harry's growth environment? But McGonagall did not answer directly and changed the subject. Don't mention that. I remember Dumbledore told me that you need to go back and forth between campus and off-campus because of the business of Silver Flash Trading Company. I'll give you a special pass. With it, you won't trigger the school's protective magic when you go in and out of Hogwarts. However, at Hogwarts, disapparition is prohibited, and there is no fireplace connected to the outside world. The only flue network that allows people to move is in Dumbledore's office. So, to and from Hogwarts, you either go to the headmaster's office or you'll have to leave Hogwarts. You don't need to worry about this. I have my own solution. Anduin shook his head indifferently, then took out a delicate leather bag. He then pulled out a door from it in front of McGonagall. After installing the door casually on the wall next to it, Anduin smiled and said, To go back to Silver Flash Trading Company, I can just use this door. I don't need to bother you. This. McGonagall looked at Anduin's series of unexpected actions and shook her head helplessly with a wry smile. I was foolish to worry about this kind of problem for you, a master alchemist, but you have to be careful with your door. Don't let some inexplicable people come in. Don't worry, this door cannot be opened without my consent, Anduin assured her. He twisted the handle, opened the door, and made a gesture of invitation. Please, Professor McGonagall, let me take you to Silver Flash Trading Company. Diagon Alley for a drink or two. The last time we had tea in Diagon Alley was 11 years ago. Time flies, and half a month has passed. On August 1st, Hagrid once again walked through the door of the Leaky Cauldron into Diagon Alley. This time, he was accompanied by a thin boy. Welcome to Diagon Alley, Harry. Hagrid let out a hearty laugh and looked cheerfully at the boy beside him. Wow! Harry, the savior who was exposed to the magical world for the first time, observed everything around him with wide eyes. Everything was so novel to him. There were crowds of people around, some hawking all kinds of products with strange names, others walking in groups or lying in front of shop windows admiring the products greedily or discussing something with great interest. Have you heard that Silver Flash firm recently signed a new contract with a mysterious singer named Celia? Her singing voice is simply beautiful. I've heard about it a long time ago. Your news is outdated. I also know that her album has been included in the Silver Flash blind box recently. I saw someone win it with my own eyes. Then what are we waiting for? A blind box is only 10 sickles. Let's go for a few. Even if you don't win the record, you won't lose. Harry watched the girls running towards the depths of Diagon Alley, talking and laughing. This made him curiously ask, Hagrid, what is the blind box those people are talking about? Blind box. Hagrid scratched his head and laughed. I seem to have heard Anduin mention it before. It seems that he used it to clear inventory. Oh no, in his words, it's a kind of lucky draw prop. It became very popular once it was launched. If you're interested, I'll take you to see them later. We have a lot of teaching aids to buy at the Silver Flash Trading Company anyway. End of this chapter. Chapter 623, Harry and the Silver Flash Trading Company. However, how can I afford these? I don't have any money, Harry said, looking up apprehensively at Hagrid, who seemed almost as tall as the sky. Where is your money, Harry? Gringotts, the Wizarding Bank. There's nothing safer, except maybe Hogwarts after it upgraded its security, Hagrid replied with a smile, pointing forward. He then put his hand into his coat, as if searching for something. Harry walked into Gringotts, puzzled, and soon learned about the wealth his deceased parents had left him. His father, James Potter, was a pure-blood wizard from the Potter family. His ancestors included Linfred, the inventor of many potions, and his grandfather, Fremont Potter, the creator of a magical shampoo formula. The family was quite well off. After Hagrid helped Harry withdraw some money, they didn't leave immediately. Instead, they ventured deeper into the Gringotts vaults. Hagrid retrieved a small package from Vault 713, an additional task assigned by Dumbledore. The old man had learned from Anduin that storing wealth in Gringotts might not be as safe as previously thought. With the money problem solved, Harry followed Hagrid to do a lot of shopping in Diagon Alley. They bought a wand, textbooks, school uniforms, cauldrons, and other necessary school supplies. Hagrid even got Harry an owl for his birthday. For Harry, who had lived with his mean aunt and uncle for years, this experience was a rare glimpse of warmth and kindness, making him look forward to his new life as a wizard. Okay, our last stop is the Silver Flash Trading Company. They have the last of the teaching aids you need. The Silver Flash blind box you asked about is also sold there. I guess you'll like it. Many young wizards can't walk away after visiting that store for the first time, which is why I saved it for last, Hagrid said, laughing heartily as he helped Harry carry the bags. Is the Silver Flash Trading Company famous? I heard a lot of people talking about that store along the way. They mentioned blind boxes, records, jewelry, candy, perfume. What kind of store is this? Why does it seem to sell everything? Harry asked, now more relaxed and curious after spending time with Hagrid. Haha, that store is not only famous in Diagon Alley, but wizards all over Europe know the name of the Silver Lightning Alchemy Development Company, Hagrid said proudly, as a small shareholder of the firm. There, you can buy the most amazing alchemy props, like magic gramophones, magic records, magic music boxes, magic lamps, and all kinds of magic amulets. Plus, since Silver Flash Trading Company collaborates with many foreign merchants, they have a large number of imported goods, food, drinks, and all sorts of things. Wow, isn't that like the supermarket I visited before? Harry's curiosity grew with Hagrid's enthusiastic introduction, and he eagerly walked deeper into Diagon Alley. Before they even got close, Harry recognized the Silver Flash Trading Company. The store was too conspicuous to miss. Even in the hot summer, its signboard with silver letters on a black background shone like a neon light, constantly exuding bits of magical aura, giving a sense of understated luxury. The number of pedestrians at the entrance was the highest in all of Diagon Alley. Wizards coming in and out almost formed a continuous stream of people. Fortunately, the space inside the store was large enough to accommodate the crowd. The store was large enough to accommodate everyone. Otherwise, there might have been a long queue outside the gate. Through the glass windows, you could see the exquisite products displayed inside. For example, on the front side, there was a group of crystal lamps. These lamps were completely different from any electric lamps Harry had seen before. They floated in the air like diamond-shaped crystals scattered in a vacuum. The crystals varied in size, and their shapes were very regular and harmonious, as if meticulously cut. Although they looked dazzling, the light they emitted was soft. Combi, Ned with their exquisite shapes, they gave an ethereal, almost magical illusion. As Harry marveled at the beauty of the crystal lamps, he was drawn to another set of lamps nearby. These lamps resembled 7 or 8 large flowers floating in the air. The flowers were of different shapes and types. Some had already bloomed, while others were still in bud form. The petals emitted a bright yet gentle light, and Harry could feel a coolness emanating from them. Upon closer inspection, he realized that these lights were actually warm, yet they brought a refreshing coolness, like a breeze passing under the shade of trees in summer. Just when Harry thought he had seen all the magic these lamps had to offer, a bud suddenly bloomed, releasing dozens of flower fairies made of light. These fairies wore exquisite dresses and had 2 sets of petal-shaped wings on their backs. "Look, they're coming out! I told you, the garden fairies show up on the hour." The young wizards watching through the window cheered in unison. They had been waiting eagerly, waving excitedly at the flower fairies, as if calling to them. Harry soon understood why the young wizards were so excited. The flower fairies flew straight through the glass window and into the street, weaving through the crowd. Some fairies even approached the little wizards timidly. "Wow, she's coming to me! She seems to like me, Mom. They say people approached by garden fairies will have good luck all day. I'm going to try the blind box." A little girl, approached by a flower fairy, shouted excitedly to her parents, as if being chosen by these light-made creatures granted some special ability. As Harry watched the little girl enviously, he noticed a little fairy approaching him, smiling strangely. Overjoyed, Harry carefully held out his hands, hoping the fairy would rest in his palm. The fairy, however, seemed weightless, and even when she stepped on his hand, he felt no weight. The flower fairy looked at Harry with interest for a while, then puffed up her cheeks and blew a cool breeze at him. Harry felt the refreshing wind caress his skin and caught a faint floral fragrance. After blowing the cool wind, the fairy turned into colorful star-like dots and dissipated into the air. "Hagrid, did you see that? She seemed to like me, and she even blew on me. Do you think this will really bring me luck?" Harry asked excitedly, looking up at Hagrid. "Ha, maybe it will, maybe it will. It seems you'll have good luck today," Hagrid encouraged him with a smile. "Really? Then can I try the blind box they mentioned? And these lights are so beautiful. Aren't they very expensive?" Harry asked, shifting his gaze back to the window. The lantern that had released the little fairy had closed again. "Hey, the price of these. These lights are really not cheap, Nuo. There were too many people blocking them just now. Look at the signs underneath," Hagrid said, pursing his lips and pointing forward. Seeing Hagrid's gesture, Harry lowered his head and noticed an exquisite display board beneath the lamps. It read, "Summer new products are on the market, so you can enjoy the coolness this summer. A full set of Dream Edge lamps for 88 galleons, a full set of Garden Symphony lamps for 108 galleons. Order now and get 10 high-grade magic wicks for free." So that set of crystal lamps is called Edge of Dreamland, and the flower lamps are Garden Symphony, Harry exclaimed. He had no idea about the prices in the wizarding world, so after witnessing the magic of these lamps firsthand, he didn't realize how outrageous the prices were. "That's right. He got the inspiration for the Garden Symphony in my hut," Hagrid said with a smile, then gently helped Harry up. "Come on, Harry. Let's go inside. It's much more interesting than the outside." "Okay." Harry's curiosity about the Silver Flash Trading Company was piqued, so he eagerly followed Hagrid inside. "Wow!" Harry couldn't remember how many times he had exclaimed today, but he couldn't help but shout again upon seeing the interior of the shop. As soon as he entered, Harry felt a refreshing coolness, a stark contrast to the scorching heat outside. Melodious music filled the air, and he saw various displays of birds, beasts, and celestial bodies, including the 2 sets of lamps he had seen outside. The 1,000-square-meter hypermarket was bustling with people. Wizards crowded around each shelf, either selecting or discussing the products, creating a lively atmosphere. However, Harry's attention was drawn to a corner of the trading house where a group of young wizards had gathered. They were clustered around a counter with a hill of colorful boxes piled on it. The boxes, about the size of a palm, were almost identical in shape and made of metal. Despite their appearance, the young wizards could easily hold them, indicating they weren't very heavy. End of this chapter. Chapter 624. The strange ant. Harry pointed to the counter in the corner and looked at Hagrid curiously. "Is that the silver flash blind box they were talking about?" "That's right," Hagrid nodded and smiled. "Those boxes are 10 sickles each. You can draw a lottery after opening them, but you have to do it on the spot. The box can't be taken away. What you get from it is completely random. If you're lucky, you might get something good in one go. But if you're unlucky, you might buy dozens and only get cheap stuff. While Hagrid was explaining to Harry, they saw a young wizard walking to the wall with 4 blind boxes in his hands. He opened one box and reached inside. Harry was shocked by what he saw. The square box in the young wizard's hands was clearly about 10 centimeters long and wide, but the wizard managed to stretch his entire arm into it. Judging by the young wizard's expression, it seemed as if he had reached into another space, fumbling for something. After a long while, he pulled his hand upwards. Harry watched in amazement as the young wizard pulled out a 40 or 50 centimeter long paper tube from the small box. What? It's a poster again, and it's from the Falmouth Falcons. If it were from the carefully flying crossbow team, it would be better. What bad luck! The young wizard threw the poster aside, then reached into the next blind box. From the remaining boxes, he pulled out a quill, a pair of mismatched stockings, and a lollipop the size of a fist. Evil spirit, I don't believe I can't get something good. The young wizard angrily took a bite of the lollipop, then took out a handful of change and rushed to the counter behind him. Why don't those blind boxes seem to have a very high winning rate? Harry observed for a while and noticed that most of the blind boxes bought by young wizards didn't contain anything valuable. Even Harry could tell that the consolation prizes weren't worth much. That's why it's called a blind box. Hagrid scratched his head and smiled. He knew that it was rare to get anything good from those boxes. Anduin had once secretly revealed to him that 90% of the blind boxes contained junk, 9% were unsellable, obsolete products, and only 1% contained genuine new products. Among that 1%, high-value items only accounted for a small fraction, with the rest being cheap goods like records. These items could be bought directly for 15 silver sickles or 1 galleon. The value of these products wasn't as high as the box itself, which was a high-end product enchanted with the untraceable extension charm. Hagrid still couldn't understand why so many people were keen on buying blind boxes, with many even becoming addicted to them. If you're interested, you can try it later, but we need to buy your school supplies now, Hagrid said, dragging the reluctant Harry in another direction. They approached another counter, which had very few people gathered around it. Behind the counter, a witch with curly hair was resting her cheeks in her hands, looking bored. "Vivienne, the store is so busy. Why are you just sitting here?" Hagrid called out to her. Despite his huge figure approaching, she didn't seem to notice him. "Ah." Vivienne, startled by Hagrid's voice, trembled all over like a hen with ruffled feathers. She glared at him with an unfriendly expression and muttered angrily, "It's you, Hagrid. You scared me." "I was simulating a chess game in my head. Can you stop being so scary all the time?" "I've been standing next to you for a while and you didn't respond at all," Hagrid complained, a bit speechless. Then he asked curiously, "By the way, don't you usually stay?" Harry couldn't help but ask, his curiosity piqued. Vivienne nodded, her expression softening. "Of course, everyone in the wizarding world knows about you, Harry. You're quite the celebrity, you know. But don't let it get to your head. Fame can be a double-edged sword." Harry smiled, feeling a bit more at ease. "Thank you, miss." "Vivienne," she replied, extending her hand. "And don't worry about the formalities. We're all friends here." Hagrid, who had been quietly observing the exchange, chuckled. "See, Harry? Not everyone is going to treat you like a museum exhibit. Vivienne here is one of the good ones." Vivienne rolled her eyes playfully. "Oh, stop it, Hagrid. You're going to make me blush." Harry laughed, feeling a warmth spread through him. It was nice to be treated like a normal person for once. "Well, it's nice to meet you, Vivienne." "Likewise, Harry," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Now, let's get you sorted with your supplies. We don't want you to be unprepared for your first year at Hogwarts." As Vivienne efficiently packed Harry's items, she continued to chat with him, sharing stories about her own time at Hogwarts and giving him tips on how to navigate the school. Harry listened intently, grateful for the advice. "Here you go," Vivienne said, handing Harry a neatly packed bag. "Everything you need for your first year. And remember, if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to come back and ask." "Thank you, Vivienne," Harry said sincerely. "I really appreciate it." Anytime, Harry, she replied with a warm smile. Good luck at Hogwarts. I'm sure you'll do great. As Harry and Hagrid left the shop, Harry felt a renewed sense of excitement and anticipation for the adventures that awaited him at Hogwarts. With friends like Hagrid and Vivienne, he knew he was in good hands. Harry couldn't help but wonder, could this lady have some connection to him, or perhaps she knew his parents? No, I haven't seen you before, but I know people who are very close to you, Vivienne chuckled lightly. She then looked at Harry and frowned. But why are you so thin, kid? If that guy sees you, he's going to be furious. Ah, who are you talking about? Harry scratched his head in confusion. This lady knows someone close to me? Do I have any relatives? And why would the person she mentioned get angry? Hey, you'll know when the time comes, Vivienne smiled slyly, then reached out to pinch Harry's cheek. Remember to eat well when you go back, and don't be picky. Otherwise, you'll suffer when you start school. Oh, that's enough. Harry's voice was distorted from being pinched, but he could sense that she genuinely cared about him. Well, that's good. I'll help you pack your things. When you come back next time, if the store isn't busy, Auntie will teach you how to play mahjong, Vivienne said as she carefully packed the teaching aids. Thank you. Harry nodded gratefully. Then, as if remembering something, he asked, By the way, do you know about the garden symphony set outside the door? Will people who get close to those flower fairies become very lucky? If you draw from the blind box, will you win the big prize? You're talking about those lamp shadows. Those things are all fake. It's good luck to be noticed by the flower fairy. I guess this rumor might have been spread by a certain someone on purpose. Vivienne rolled her eyes and waved her hand dismissively. Huh? Then why did that flower fairy come to me and blow on me? I was so far away from the cabinet. Harry still held on to a bit of hope, feeling that the flower fairy seemed very spirited. Hey, you don't understand. Vivienne leaned in close to Harry's ear and whispered with a smile. The garden symphony, set in the cupboard, is specially customized, and the lamp is enchanted. It has the gold-smelling curse cast on it, so those flower fairies will only get close to people who have galleons on them. The fact that she likes you proves that you're rich. End of this chapter. Chapter 6 and 25, The Blind Box. What? Harry was stunned by Vivienne's words, feeling as if his entire worldview had collapsed in an instant. Those cute flower fairies were staring at him. Because he had money? Is the adult world really so mercenary? It's absolutely true. Otherwise, how could we trick those little kids into spending money in the store? This is a little secret of ours, so you have to keep it for us, Vivienne continued, a hint of cunning in her eyes. Our store's boss is very shrewd, so be careful if you meet him in the future. Harry was bewildered by Vivienne's words. He stood frozen for a moment before finally understanding. Oh, I see. By the way, let me tell you another little secret. Vivienne seemed to have taken a liking to this shy little boy and whispered again. Look, those blind boxes are all colorful. If you want to get good things, find the most unpopular color to buy. It will be easier to get something good out of those. Ah, really? There's such a trick? Harry suddenly perked up, looking at Vivienne nervously. Of course. Just remember, the uglier and dirtier the blind box, the higher the probability of finding something good inside. Auntie wouldn't lie to you. Vivienne smiled and patted Harry's head. Of course, this was only a relatively high probability. Vivienne smiled secretly, thinking that Anduin's business acumen was becoming more and more savvy, with various methods of making money emerging one after another. Speaking of these blind boxes, Anduin had spent thousands of galleons just to make them initially. Vivienne had laughed at him for wasting money, but since the launch of the blind box business, it had become so booming that the cost was recovered within a month. After getting the information from Vivienne, Harry couldn't help but want to try it again. Thinking of this, he slowly moved towards the counter selling blind boxes. Hagrid, next to him, didn't stop him and continued chatting casually with Vivienne about homework. When Harry finally squeezed through the noisy crowd to the front of the counter, he found that the salesman inside was actually a big dog. The dog was moving nimbly, helping the little wizards around exchange the blind boxes they liked. These blind boxes were piled up in the cupboard behind it, and even pressed on the ground and under its buttocks. The square boxes were colorful, almost all different. Some were depicted with simple geometric or animal patterns, while others had graffiti-like patches of various colors. There were also blind boxes of pure colors, but even these were divided into very fine shades. The red that Harry saw alone had 7 or 8 different variations. Boy, which one do you like? If you're sure, choose quickly. Don't just stand in the middle of the road in a daze. Hog, the dog, couldn't help but yell at Harry, who was just staring at the blind boxes. Seeing that the dog could not only work but also talk, Harry was taken aback. However, noticing that others around him were indifferent to the talking dog, he suppressed his curiosity. I want to buy 4 blind boxes. Like the little wizard he had seen before, Harry took out a handful of money from his pocket, piled it on the counter, and shouted loudly. Okay, 4 blind boxes are 2 galleons and 6 sickles in total. Which ones do you like? Hurry up and tell me. Hog quickly counted the money for Harry, and then urged him, unable to help the surrounding guests, as there were too many, and some were even urging them. Well, can I choose the one under your butt? Harry pointed to a dark blue blind box under Hog that he was using as a cushion and looked at him with some trepidation. Hey, it's another guy who wants to steal chickens. Do you think there must be something good in the blind box I'm sitting on? Hog smiled slyly, then pushed the blind box he was sitting on in front of Harry without hesitation. He casually pulled another box from the side and used it as a chair. Did he really just choose a blind box to sit on? Ever since Harry talked with Vivienne, he always felt there might be something tricky hidden in the boxes. For example, the store employees might put good items in the corners. But Hog's reaction seemed different from what he imagined. Then help me with the gray one, the half-black and half-green one, and the khaki one, Harry said after a moment of hesitation, pointing to 3 other blind boxes that seemed very unattractive to him. Oh, you want these? You have a good eye? Hog said, taking out the blind boxes Harry had chosen. He looked at Harry with teasing eyes. Harry didn't continue the conversation. He nervously took the blind boxes and ran away. Phew, I don't know if that fast-talking lady was right. These blind boxes look so ugly, Harry muttered to himself. He spread the boxes on the ground and took out the dark blue box that Hog had used as a stool. He pulled off the lid vigorously and looked inside curiously, only to find the box empty. The bottom was a chaotic black, resembling a layer of black smoke. Harry scratched his head in confusion, then turned the box upside down and shook it vigorously, but nothing happened. Empty? Probably not, Harry muttered, puzzled. What are you doing? Why don't you open the blind box after buying it? Is this some kind of new fortune-telling ritual? Before Harry could make a move, an immature voice came from beside him. Huh? Harry looked up nervously and saw a boy about the same age as him standing next to him. The boy had red hair and freckles on his face and was staring at him with wide eyes. The boy also held several blind boxes in his hand, seemingly just bought and looking for a place to open them. Fortune-telling ritual? Harry asked, puzzled by what the boy had said. Well, recently it's popular to chant a spell before opening the box. It's said to increase the luck of getting good things. Earlier, I used to wear a 4-leaf clover on my body. Of course, I tried that method, and it didn't seem to work, the red-haired boy said, pursing his lips and shrugging. Why? Isn't this the latest fortune-telling ritual? Let me try it too. The boy spread his blind boxes on the ground, opened them like Harry did, shook the box mouth down, and then reached his hand in. It's just a bottle of owl soda, the boy said in disgust after seeing the object he pulled out. What? Your fortune-telling ritual doesn't seem to work very well. He picked up another blind box and muttered, Praise Silver Lightning. Then he reached his hand in again and pulled out a handheld cosmetic mirror in front of Harry. After seeing the mirror, the boy cheered happily. Haha, it's a children's mirror. George was right, mantras are the most useful. Children's mirror? What is that? Harry asked, envious that the boy had pulled out an object after chanting a spell. This is a children's mirror. It's also available on store shelves. In this mirror, you can see yourself as a child. It costs 3 galleons to buy directly, the red-haired boy explained, pointing the mirror at Harry. Harry saw a 3- or 4-year-old kid in the mirror. The kid's hairstyle and clothes were exactly the same as his, but his face was chubby and cute. Harry was momentarily dazzled. He noticed that there seemed to be another version of himself in the mirror, but the face overlapped with his own, leaving only a faint phantom visible at the edges. Shaking his head vigorously, he closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the phantom had vanished, as if it had been a mere illusion. This brief episode didn't dampen Harry's enthusiasm for exploring the blind box. He had seen the boy across from him retrieve something after chanting a spell, which piqued his curiosity to try it himself. "Praise the silver lightning," Harry muttered softly, then mimicked the boy's actions, reaching into the blind box. He felt as though his hand had penetrated a deep hole, extending his arm fully without touching the bottom. After fishing around for a while, he finally felt as if he had grasped something out of thin air. The sensation of exploring the unknown with his own hands was exhilarating for Harry, something he had never experienced before. However, when he withdrew his hand from the blind box, he found he was holding an ordinary mug, the kind you could find anywhere. "Your spell doesn't seem to work either," Harry remarked skeptically to the boy next to him while examining the mug. He began to suspect that the other boy's success might have been mere luck. "Of course it won't work if you're not sincere," the red-haired boy said seriously. "Listen to me, you have to pray to silver lightning from the bottom of your heart. Otherwise, you'll just get a bunch of useless junk." The red-haired boy seemed to have been encouraged by his earlier success and was now fully convinced of the spell's power. He muttered reverently again, attempting another draw with "Praise the silver lightning," but the results were disappointing. He mostly pulled out worthless trinkets, with the only useful item being a children's mirror. Strange, why did it suddenly stop working? It must be that my pronunciation wasn't accurate enough. Fred always laughs at my poor pronunciation. Yes, that must be it. No, I still want to try again. After a bout of self-criticism, the red-haired boy rushed back into the crowd in front of the counter, determined to try his luck once more. The blind boxes he had drawn from earlier disappeared into thin air shortly after. End of this chapter. Chapter 6 and 26, Legendary Items. Seeing the red-haired boy rush into the crowd, Harry seemed to realize something. It seems Auntie was right. There's no such thing as luck when it comes to blind boxes. Whether it's a spell or a fairy, they're all just tricks to fool children. With this thought, Harry couldn't help but lower his expectations for the blind boxes. However, the thrill of exploring the unknown was irresistible, perhaps explaining the popularity of blind boxes. Sighing, Harry stopped trying to recite any spells and directly reached into the other blind boxes. As expected, he pulled out 2 more low-value items, but at least they were common daily necessities and would be useful when taken back. Finally, Harry turned his attention to the last khaki box. "Let's hurry up and go back with Hagrid." He sighed lightly, reaching into the blind box indifferently. Soon, Harry felt something in the void. As he pulled it out, a dazzling golden light suddenly burst from the blind box in his hand. The light was so bright that it even caught the attention of the other young wizards nearby. "It's shining! It's shining! What is it? Someone has drawn a legendary item. Oh my God, I thought that was just a rumor, but it's true." It's said that since the launch of the blind box, there have only been 2 golden legendary prizes, and now there's another one. Amidst the bustling noise, everyone turned their gazes to Harry. The golden flash lasted for nearly 10 seconds before gradually dimming. Then everyone saw clearly what Harry was holding, a string of pure silver necklaces. The delicate chains seemed to be woven with dozens of silver threads, constantly shining like stars. At the bottom hung a lightning-shaped pendant, also a mysterious and noble bright silver color. When Harry brought it up in front of him, he noticed a faint layer of complex lines flashing across the surface of the pendant. It's so beautiful, truly worthy of being a legendary item. You can see its quality with the naked eye. That's right. This boy is really lucky to draw such a big prize. I wonder what kind of luck transfer ritual he used. I saw him shaking the blind box earlier. Maybe that had something to do with it. Seeing the birth of a legendary item, the young wizards couldn't help but watch. They gradually shifted their conversation to Harry's strange behavior when opening the box. "Wow!" Harry, who had pulled out the pendant himself, was in a daze, but kept exclaiming instinctively. He hadn't expected to draw something so valuable, let alone something that glowed. What is this? Harry looked around blankly after admiring the exquisite pendant for a while. He didn't know what treasure he had drawn. Just when Harry thought he could get an answer from the wizards next to him, an older boy shook his head and said, "We don't know either. Legendary items are unique and are the highest rewards that can be given out in the blind box. I heard that these legendary props are all made by the owner of Silver Flash Trading Company himself. Even the same products can't be found in the store." The only one? Legendary props? Harry felt his heart surge with excitement at such a compelling explanation. Legendary. It sounded incredibly powerful. Holding the pendant tightly in his hand, Harry rushed out of the crowd excitedly and ran towards Hagrid. Hagrid, I drew a legendary item." Excitedly, Harry ran all the way to the teaching aids counter for freshmen, holding up the lightning pendant high, eager to share his joy, at him with a mysterious smile. "For now, just enjoy your new treasure." Harry nodded, still feeling the excitement of his new acquisition. He couldn't wait to see how the Shining would protect him in the future. Hagrid, seeing Harry's enthusiasm, patted him on the back gently. "Well, Harry, it looks like you've got yourself a powerful little trinket there. Just be careful with it, all right?" Hagrid advised, his voice filled with genuine concern. "Don't worry, Hagrid. I'll be careful," Harry assured him, his eyes still fixed on the pendant now hanging around his neck. As they left the shop, Harry couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder and anticipation. The Shining was not just a protective charm, it was a symbol of the magical world he was becoming a part of, a world filled with mysteries and adventures waiting to be discovered. The trio walked down the bustling streets of Diagon Alley, the air filled with the sounds of chatter and the occasional burst of magical energy. Harry felt a sense of belonging, surrounded by people who understood the world he was now a part of. "Where to next?" Harry asked, looking up at Hagrid. "How about we grab a bite to eat? All this excitement has made me hungry," Hagrid suggested, with a hearty laugh. "Sounds good to me," Harry agreed, his stomach rumbling in agreement. As they made their way to a nearby cafe, Harry couldn't help but glance at the shining pendant every now and then, feeling a sense of security and excitement. He knew that this was just the beginning of his journey into the magical world, and he was ready for whatever came next. Vivian watched them go, a thoughtful expression on her face. She knew that Harry's journey was just beginning, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation for the young wizard's future. With a final glance at the departing trio, she turned back to her shop, ready to assist the next customer in their own magical adventure. Harry stood at King's Cross Station, a smile playing on his lips as he thought about the boy he had met a month ago. Time had flown by, and now Harry found himself alone, pushing a trolley laden with luggage. He absent-mindedly stroked the shining pendant hanging from his neck, a memento from his trip to Diagon Alley. The anticipation of his new life as a wizard filled him with excitement. But first, he had to solve the mystery of finding Platform 9 3/4. He wandered around the station, searching for the elusive platform, but his efforts seemed futile. Just as frustration began to set in, Harry spotted a familiar figure. It was the red-haired boy he had met at the Silver Flash firm. The boy was accompanied by 3 older boys, a little girl, and a woman who appeared to be their mother. "I've told you so many times. Why don't you believe me? I saw someone open a legendary blind box at the Silver Flash Trading Company," the red-haired boy exclaimed, pushing his trolley forward and glaring at his brothers. "Yeah, our dear brother Ron is so lucky to have seen legendary items in person," one of the twins beside Ron said, his face contorted in mock surprise. "Oh my God, are you still going to claim you talked to the person who handed out the legendary item? Do you think we'll believe that?" "Ha!" the other twin sneered. "What I said is true. It's true." Ron's face flushed with anger as his brothers continued to mock him. "Okay, isn't it just a legendary item? It's not like I don't have," one of the older boys began, but he was interrupted. Ginny, the little girl, ran forward and flashed the alchemy bracelets on her wrists. "Hey, are you talking about this kind of legendary item? I have several more." "Shut up," the 3 brothers yelled at Ginny in unison, their argument momentarily forgotten. Harry watched the scene unfold, a mixture of amusement and curiosity on his face. He felt a sense of relief knowing he wasn't the only one struggling to find the platform. Perhaps these people could help him. End of this chapter. Chapter 67. Station. Mom, they're yelling at me. Ginny cried out, throwing herself into her mother Molly's arms in frustration. Her 3 elder brothers, who had been arguing amongst themselves, had suddenly united against her. George, Fred, Ron, how many times have I told you not to be mean to your sister? Molly scolded, hugging Ginny protectively. She glared at the 3 boys. You should know how to be good brothers. Mom, it's not like we're being bad. George protested, rolling his eyes. Yeah, it's just that Ginny is always showing off in front of us, Fred added. You saw how proud she was just now. Exactly, Ron chimed in. She talks about those legendary items like they're common toys. It's really annoying. The 3 brothers wore their dissatisfaction openly. Ginny, with her godfather Anduin, a master alchemist, always had the best things. They, on the other hand, could only dream of such treasures and had to settle for buying blind boxes from the Silver Flash Trading Company. Their jealousy was palpable. What made it worse was that Ginny never shared her treasures. Instead, she flaunted them, making Ron and the others feel even more resentful. So, when Ginny showed off, it was no surprise that her brothers were annoyed. That's no excuse to yell at your sister, Molly reprimanded them. Isn't it right to give good things to your sister? Besides, you boys waste your money on those blind boxes every time you go to Diagon Alley. You bring back a bunch of useless things. Even though our financial situation is better now, you should still be mindful. But you always tell us to remember the hard times, right, Mom? George said with a cheeky grin. Maybe you should confiscate all of Ginny's treasures so she can remember the hard times too. You cheeky brat, Molly snapped, pinching George's ear. I should withhold all your pocket money so you don't waste it in those shops. Fred, you've been a bad influence on Ron. He's even started bragging now, and I bet he learned it from you 2. Ouch, it hurts. George winced, pleading for mercy. It's not our fault. How is Ron's bragging related to us? I'm not bragging. I really saw someone with a legendary item, Ron protested, feeling wronged that even his mother doubted him. Admit you're bragging, or Mom will definitely take away your pocket money. Ginny teased, sticking her tongue out at Ron. You, Ron fumed, but then he spotted Harry watching from the side. Seizing the opportunity, he shouted, It was him! The boy who got the legendary item is Harry! Ron pushed his cart towards Harry, as if he had found a lifeline. Tell them, Harry, you were the one who got the legendary item that day, right? All eyes turned to Harry, Fred, George, Molly, Ginny, Percy, and the others. Fred, still skeptical, said, Ron, give it a rest. You can't just point at someone and say it's true. Exactly, George added, addressing Harry. Little brother, I see you're a new student at Hogwarts. I don't know what your relationship with Ron is, but you shouldn't get dragged into his tall tales. Ron looked at Harry with pleading eyes, hoping for validation. Harry felt as if he had found his savior. The legendary item you're talking about, is it the one from the Silver Flash Trading Company's blind box? Yes, I did draw it, he admitted honestly, still a bit stunned. Oh, George and Fred exchanged surprised glances before rushing forward in unison. Really? Can you show us? Oh. Harry didn't fully grasp how enticing legendary items were to these blind box enthusiasts, but he obediently pulled the pendant from his chest. Vivian in the store told me it's called The Shining. The Shining! Cool. George and Fred's eyes widened as they stared at the radiant lightning pendant on Harry's chest, their mouths agape in admiration. See, I told you I wasn't lying, and you doubted me, Ron exclaimed proudly, but his triumph was short-lived. George and Fred ignored him, instead focusing on Harry, chatting and laughing. It's really a legendary item. You can tell this necklace is magical just by looking at it, Fred said, his eyes fixed on the Shining. How did you get it? Is there some exclusive transfer ceremony? Can you teach us? George asked, draping an arm around Harry's shoulder with a smile. No, I just drew it randomly, Harry replied, scratching his head in embarrassment at their sudden enthusiasm. How is that possible? Fred exclaimed, taken aback. Hog said you need skills to get good items. We spent 20 deep-fried ribs to get something decent. Yes, Yes, don't you remember doing anything special back then? George pressed. If there was something, it might be. Harry hesitated, then continued truthfully. When I was buying blind boxes, I chose the ugliest ones. I don't know if that counts. Ah? It's that simple? George and Fred were stunned. Doesn't that mean there's no luck involved in drawing blind boxes? George wondered aloud. I heard from others that many of those fortune-telling ceremonies were just scams spread by that dog to deceive people, Harry revealed, recalling what Vivienne had told him. George and Fred exchanged angry glances and cursed in unison. Damn it! That bastard hog! George, Fred, stop pestering others, Molly suddenly appeared, grabbing each twin by the ear and pulling them aside. She turned to Harry with an apologetic smile. I'm sorry, they're too addicted to those blind boxes. I hope they didn't scare you. Oh no, it's fine, Harry replied nervously, then remembered something and raised the ticket in his hand. By the way, can you teach me how to get to platform 9 3/4? Don't worry, dear. My son Ron is also going to Hogwarts for the first time this year. Just follow him, Molly explained kindly. She then directed Percy, Fred, and George to enter through the partition wall between platforms 9 and 10. When it was Ron's turn, he winked at Harry. Hey, I'll wait for you on the other side. Thanks for helping me. With that, Ron pushed his luggage and rushed through the wall. Watching them disappear one by one, Harry swallowed nervously. Encouraged by Molly, he ran straight towards the stone wall. That's why these boys are always so obsessed with alchemy props. I see that the Godfather has a lot of alchemy items that could be called legendary props. I don't care to pick them up, Ginny remarked, watching her brothers leave. I don't know, but don't be so hard on your brothers all the time. I think Anduin has spoiled you. I'll definitely write to him when I get back, Molly replied, shaking her head. Molly gave Ginny a stern look. Hey, the Godfather doesn't care about me this year. Ginny showed a sly smile. I heard that he's going to be a professor at Hogwarts, so he probably won't have time to come outside. Really? Molly was slightly startled. Why didn't you say it earlier? Doesn't that mean your brothers are going to become Anduin's students? I kept it from them on purpose. Ginny raised her head triumphantly. I'll let the Godfather give those guys a good lesson so they won't give me a hard time. You. Molly pressed Ginny's head reproachfully, then looked in the direction where everyone had left with some worry. I don't know how Anduin will teach them. I remember he was an Auror instructor and almost exhausted himself. Those Aurors even complained to Arthur. By the way, Molly suddenly remembered. Who was that little boy who just appeared? Why wasn't there even a family member to see him off? You ask me? I saw that kid looking dumbfounded, as if he was easy to bully. Ginny smiled slyly, then bounced out of the station, dragging her mother's hand. On the other side, Harry had already joined Ron. He was admiring the old-fashioned train in front of him with wide eyes, surrounded by bustling young wizards. Don't just stand there. Let's get on the train. Although Ron was riding the train for the first time, he took the initiative to lead the way ahead of Harry. After a while, the two boarded the century-old steam train. So, what's your gnaw? Me? I'm Ron Weasley. After finally finding an empty carriage to sit down in, Ron looked at Harry with great interest, remembering how Harry had helped him earlier. I'm Harry Potter. Just call me Harry, Harry replied with a smile. End of this chapter. Chapter 628, The Legendary Uncle Wilson. Harry Potter, you are that Harry Potter, aren't you? Ron stared at Harry with wide eyes, pointing to his forehead with a mix of awe and embarrassment. You mean the scar? Harry brushed back his hair nonchalantly. He had grown accustomed to his peculiar reputation in the wizarding world. Absolutely, Ron exclaimed after seeing the lightning-shaped scar. No wonder you could draw a legendary item. That pendant is a perfect match for your scar. Harry laughed at Ron's observation. He hadn't considered that connection before. Curious, he asked, why do you care so much about those legendary items? I saw you drawing a lot of blind boxes at Silver Flash Trading Company the other day. Who can ignore a legendary item? Ron's eyes widened, as if the idea of being indifferent to such items was absurd. We've seen how magical they are. After a pause, Ron leaned in and said mysteriously, let me tell you a secret. My sister has a legendary item, and not just one. These items let her fly without a broomstick or pass through walls. And the legendary bracelet Ginny has once saved her life. A few years ago, our house was being redecorated, and a large cabinet fell from the third floor. At the critical moment, a hood appeared on her body and blocked the falling object. How amazing is that? Really? Harry was astonished. He thought his pendant, the Shining, was incredible, but this was on another level. So you all try to get blind boxes to obtain similar legendary items? But why does your sister have so many? Did she also draw a lot of blind boxes? Not exactly. Ginny is just lucky. Ron sighed, resting his cheeks on his arms. Uncle Wilson is her godfather. Ginny has never lacked legendary items since she was a child, but she's very stingy. She never lets us touch those treasures. That's why George, Fred, and I are so envious. We've been trying to get a legendary item of our own. Who is Uncle Wilson? Is he a relative of your family? Why is he only your sister's godfather? Harry was puzzled by the unfamiliar name. Uncle Wilson is Anduin Wilson. You don't know him? Ron exclaimed, eyes wide. Harry shook his head, embarrassed. I lived with my aunt since I was a child. The first time I saw Diagon Alley was when I entered it with Hagrid. I see, Ron nodded. You may not know Anduin Wilson, but you must know Silver Flash Trading Company, right? Wait, are you saying that Uncle Wilson is? That's right, Ron nodded proudly. He is the boss of Silver Flash Trading Company, and he's also a great alchemist. It's said that all the alchemy items sold there are made by him, even the legendary ones. My God! Harry was startled. You mean he made the Shining I drew? Harry suddenly remembered that when he and Hagrid had entered Diagon Alley, Hagrid had indeed mentioned Anduin. Vivian had also said that Shining was the work of the boss of Silver Flash Trading Company. Harry recalled that Vivian had hinted that the owner of Silver Flash Trading Company seemed to know him and had a special relationship with him. Can you tell me more about this Uncle Wilson? Since he's your sister's godfather, he must have a very close relationship with your family. Harry's curiosity about Anduin, whom he had never met, was piqued. Of course. Ron looked up proudly. Uncle Wilson and our family are not just good friends. My father is also a minority shareholder of Silver Flash Trading Company. Ron seemed quite proud. Do you know that Uncle Wilson's experience is legendary? He was once a combat hero certified by the Ministry of Magic. He founded the Silver Flash Trading Company in Diagon Alley before even graduating from Hogwarts. His outstanding alchemy products quickly swept across the country and even gained fame abroad. Our family's previous conditions were actually quite difficult. With 7 children, it wasn't easy. But thanks to Uncle Wilson, our life gradually improved. Even the house was refurbished. Otherwise, I might still be wearing my brother's old clothes and using a hand-me-down wand. Wow, a combat hero. That sounds really cool, Harry said, listening to Ron's story with great interest. He then asked curiously, then why is he only your sister's godfather and not yours? Well, Ron looked a bit embarrassed. I don't really know. I heard that Uncle Wilson was with Ginny when she was born. That guy is really lucky. How did he become a combat hero? Did he participate in a war? Harry's curiosity about Wilson's experiences was growing. I don't know much about it, Ron admitted, shaking his head. I don't know everything about the adults' affairs, and Uncle Wilson is usually very busy. We rarely see him, maybe once a year. This year, he just came over for a meal at our house. Want to buy something, kids? While the two were chatting, a small cart filled with all kinds of snacks came in through the compartment door. 2 of each, Ron said casually, pulling out a handful of change from his pocket. He then looked at Harry excitedly. By the way, I still have some imported snacks that Uncle Wilson gave me. You should try them. Ron stood up and took out a large package from his luggage. After opening it, he revealed a collection of colorful snacks, which looked more delicate than those from the snack cart. Look, this is Moonlight Toffee, imported from France. After eating it, your eyes will glow blue. It's interesting, and this is German flame chocolate. Although it looks like it's on fire, it's not hot at all. Just eat it, and you'll feel great. At this moment, Ron seemed like a local host entertaining a guest, showing off his collection to Harry with relish. Harry felt a bit flattered, especially because Ron had so many snacks. Do you usually have so many snacks to eat? Harry asked, stuffing a piece of flaming chocolate into his mouth and looking at Ron with curiosity. Of course, my mother doesn't allow me to eat too many snacks at home, but Uncle Wilson sends them to us every holiday and on everyone's birthday, so we've saved up quite a lot. Speaking of food, Ron suddenly sighed. It's a pity that Scabbers is gone. We used to share these snacks with him. Who is Scabbers? Harry asked. Scabbers was originally my brother Percy's pet mouse. It had lived with us for almost 8 years, but it suddenly disappeared 2 years ago. I still remember the day Uncle Wilson came to visit us. He chatted with my dad for a long time, and then Scabbers disappeared the next day. Ron shrugged helplessly. I liked him quite a bit. By the way, did you bring a pet to Hogwarts? I have an owl. I named her Hedwig, Harry smiled. He found Ron quite interesting, aside from his tendency to show off. Has anyone seen a toad? A girl in wizard robes suddenly appeared at the door of the compartment. A toad? Ron looked at her in confusion. It's a student named Neville. He lost his toad, the girl explained, glancing around the compartment as if to see if the toad was hidden somewhere. We haven't seen any toads, but the Neville you're talking about, is he Neville Longbottom? Ron scratched his head. You know him? Harry asked curiously. Yes, Ron nodded affirmatively. He's our neighbor, and he has Ron had always thought he had a good relationship with Uncle Wilson. According to Ginny, he often saw him at Uncle Wilson's house. Wilson. The girl outside the door suddenly interjected. Are you talking about Anduin Wilson, the most famous alchemist in the contemporary wizarding world, winner of the Order of Merlin First Class, international wizard duel champion, and the legendary wizard who created tactical training? Huh? Ron was visibly puzzled by the long list of titles. Does Uncle Wilson have so many accolades? I thought he was just a battle hero and the owner of Silver Flash Trading Company. Oh my God, you have the nerve to call him uncle. I thought you guys knew each other very well. The girl glanced at Ron with some disdain. She couldn't help but step into the carriage, raising her finger as she spoke. Don't you know that this year, Hogwarts has introduced the most advanced tactical training course? Anduin Wilson is the founder of this new subject. His name is on the cover of the new textbook. Don't you all know anything about it? Who flips through new textbooks before school starts? And who pays attention to the names of the authors on the textbooks? Ron asked, looking genuinely confused. I do. The girl proudly raised her head. I previewed all the textbooks before school started. Of course, I also tried several spells, and they are quite effective. It's just that I can understand most of the other textbooks, but Anduin Wilson's tactical training is very obscure. I can't even find the source of many technical terms in it. The girl admitted, looking a bit perplexed. End of this chapter. Chapter 6 and 29, A Magical Encounter, Request for Recommendations and Monthly Votes. You've read all the books in advance? How can you understand them? Ron stared wide-eyed, disbelief etched across his face. What's the point? The girl pursed her lips triumphantly. Unable to resist showing off, she drew out her wand and aimed it at Harry's eyes. Let me show you this. Reparo. As the girl uttered the spell, Harry's cracked old glasses instantly restored to their original form. He took them off, exclaiming in amazement, It's fixed right away, isn't it? The girl smiled triumphantly, then caught a glimpse of the scar on Harry's forehead. My God, are you Harry Potter? So even you know me? Harry, still marveling at the girl's magic, replied casually. I'm Hermione Granger. Hermione didn't expect to meet a famous person just by walking around and was very excited. Your story has been included in Modern History of Magic, The Rise and Fall of Dark Magic, and Deeds of Great Wizards of the 20th Century. I've read them all. I can say that you are the most famous wizard in the past 10 years, except for Anduin Wilson. Has Uncle Wilson's name been written into the history books? Ron, due to his familiarity, had a very shallow understanding of Anduin's experience. That's natural. He is the most influential wizard in contemporary times. Not only has he promoted the development of modern alchemy, but the training method he founded has been adopted by many magic schools. We will also be learning this class this year. Maybe the professor is an Auror who has personally received his training. Hermione recalled what she had read in the book. Is it possible that he himself will be our training professor? Harry was very interested in the topic of Anduin. Impossible. Before Hermione could respond, Ron interrupted. Uncle Wilson is the boss of Silver Flash Trading Company. He is a very busy man, and with his status, there's no need for him to work at Hogwarts. The school probably can't afford his salary. That's right, Hermione nodded. I looked through the history textbooks and found that Mr. Wilson often travels abroad and is not in England for most of the year. Lowering her voice, she added, It is said that Anduin Wilson is also involved in the world-famous German Ministry of Magic split incident, American Bloodlines and Cleaners Fire incident, and Mexico Ministry of Magic rebellion. Of course, the book is very cryptic. I'm afraid only he himself knows what really happened. Whoa, that's cool. Harry found himself continually amazed since his exposure to the wizarding world. But a big man like him has nothing to do with us. Hermione stood up and walked out of the compartment, reminding them, By the way, the train is coming to the station soon. Don't forget to change into your robes. With that, Hermione disappeared in a flash, leaving Ron and Harry alone. Starting to show off before even entering school. This girl is too much. I don't like her. No matter which house she is assigned to, I don't want her in it, Ron said, curling his lips in displeasure. But she's really amazing, isn't she? She can cast spells before even starting school. Harry shrugged indifferently, then stood up and began packing and changing clothes with Ron. Not long after, the train arrived at the terminal. Hagrid, holding a new magic lamp, was already on the platform to welcome everyone. Okay, first-year students, please go this way. Follow me. Hagrid yelled at the crowd. He pressed a button on the lantern, activating a switch. A stream of white light shot out from the lantern, and a floating sign with first grade appeared above his head. Amazingly, no matter which direction you looked from, you could only see the front of the sign. The magic sign was very conspicuous in the dark. The first-year freshmen were quickly attracted by Hagrid's hand and gathered around him. Hey, Hagrid! Harry approached and greeted Hagrid happily. Your lamp looks really cool. Haha, isn't it? My lamp is specially made. It can turn the content I wrote in advance into subtitles. Speaking of which, this thing can be regarded as a legendary item. After all, it is the only one, Hagrid said cheerfully, smiling. He really liked the lantern that Anduin had given him. It saved him a lot of trouble every year. Just such a broken lamp, and you have the nerve to call it a legendary item? While the two were chatting, an untimely voice suddenly came from the side. Everyone turned their heads and found that it was a handsome boy with pale blonde hair. The young man squeezed to the front of the first-year crowd and said with a proud smile, I am Draco Malfoy, and I have a real legendary item in my hand. I dare say this is the only one in the first year. Puff! When Malfoy was showing off to everyone, Ron, who was next to Harry, couldn't help but curl his lips into a smile, which immediately drew Malfoy's cold eyes. What? You think I'm bragging? Malfoy glanced at Ron's hair and said contemptuously, Red hair, tasteless clothes, you must belong to that Weasley family, a bunch of nouveau rich. That's better than your Malfoy family, Ron retorted disdainfully. I only know how to sit and watch the sky. And what's this so-called legendary item in the first grade? I know you don't believe me. Malfoy thought that Ron was questioning his claims and immediately pulled out an item from his body, holding it up high. Look, this is the real legendary item, my hurricane staff. Oh! When they saw Malfoy holding up the magical shimmering object, all the little wizards exclaimed at first. But after they saw the real appearance of the prop in his hand, they couldn't help but laugh out loud. Why was this so? Because the shape of the prop in Malfoy's hand was really a bit hard to describe. It was a small cane less than 30 centimeters long. The bright silver metal stick at the end of the hand was nothing special. What was more eye-catching was the head of this cane, which was actually a hollow heart embedded with pink crystals. Of course, the continuous spiraling inward like a whirlpool of magical light in the center of the heart still proved that this was a genuine magic item. Haha, you call this fairy wand a legendary prop? Are you going to yell about transformation and become a Sailor Moon? Ron occasionally came into contact with muggles around the burrow, so he had learned some strange knowledge from the muggle kids. Don't underestimate my hurricane wand. It can directly control the wind. Be careful, or I'll blow you into the sky in one breath. Malfoy saw his beloved staff being ridiculed, and his face flushed with panic. But the shape of the wand in Malfoy's hand was really girly. If this prop were in the hands of a girl, everyone might praise it as cute, but it seemed very inconsistent when paired with Malfoy, like a muscular man with a pair of rabbit ears. So everyone looked at Malfoy with smiles in their eyes, and Ron even laughed out loud while clutching his stomach. "Damn it!" Malfoy blushed from being stimulated by Ron's laughter. In desperation, he couldn't help pointing the wand in his hand at him and shouted, "Dare to laugh at me? Let me show you how powerful it is. Let me blow you away." Following Malfoy's angry shout, a violent whirlwind suddenly gathered under Ron's feet, and it was about to rise. Harry, next to him, couldn't help but feel anxious when he saw this and quickly pushed Ron away. But he himself entered the circle of wind, and soon the whirlwind lifted Harry directly to a height of 1 meter in the air. But at this tense moment, the shining on his chest suddenly burst into a blue light. Then Harry disappeared into the air with a swish, and when he reappeared, he was several meters away. "Wow, that boy also has legendary props." The crowd around was astonished as Malfoy's fairy wand summoned a whirlwind. However, Harry's sudden teleportation made everyone's eyes widen in even greater surprise. "Look at the scar on that boy's forehead. He's Harry Potter," someone in the crowd exclaimed as the whirlwind ruffled Harry's hair. "Harry Potter?" Malfoy, interrupted by Harry, calmed down and looked over in astonishment. "Malfoy, what are you doing?" Ron, who had been pushed and staggered, realized that Malfoy was attacking him. He immediately rushed forward and grabbed Malfoy's collar in anger. "Whether it was me or Harry, if we were really swept up by the whirlwind, we could have been seriously hurt." You dare to laugh at me," Malfoy stammered. Despite realizing he had lost control of his emotions, he remained stubborn. On the other side, Harry, who had just been teleported away, came to his senses. Seeing his friends standing up for him, he was about to join the fray when it looked like the 3 freshmen were about to wrestle. "Enough!" A mountain-like figure appeared beside them, and Hagrid separated the 3. "Stop messing around in front of Hogwarts. Do you still want to enroll?" Hagrid then turned to Harry. "How are you? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Harry replied, patting his body to make sure. He shook his head at Hagrid. Relieved, Hagrid sighed. The sudden incident had caught him off guard. He then glared at Malfoy. "Kid, pay attention. Don't get expelled before entering the school. If I catch you using alchemy props indiscriminately again, I'll have Professor McGonagall confiscate them." Malfoy, genuinely scared, nodded nervously while clutching his beloved fairy wand tightly to his chest. End of this chapter. The other side. The sight of Hogwarts looming in the distance filled Harry with a sense of awe and excitement. "All right, everyone, gather round," Hagrid called out, his voice booming over the gentle lapping of the lake's waters. "We'll be taking the boats across the lake to get to the castle. 4 to a boat, no more, no less." The students quickly paired up and climbed into the small wooden boats. Harry and Ron found themselves sharing a boat with Hermione Granger and Neville Longbottom. As they settled in, the boats began to move on their own, gliding smoothly across the water. "Wow, this is amazing," Hermione said, her eyes wide with wonder as she took in the surroundings. "I've read about this in Hogwarts, a history, but seeing it in person is something else entirely." "Yeah, it's pretty cool," Harry agreed, feeling a sense of camaraderie with his new friends. "I can't believe we're finally here." As the boats drew closer to the castle, the mist began to clear, revealing the grandeur of Hogwarts in all its glory. The towering spires and ancient stone walls seemed to glow in the moonlight, casting an enchanting reflection on the surface of the lake. "Look at that!" Neville exclaimed, pointing towards the castle. "It's even more magnificent than I imagined." Hagrid's boat led the way, and soon they reached the shore. The students disembarked and followed Hagrid up a steep path that led to the castle's entrance. The massive wooden doors creaked open, and they were greeted by Professor McGonagall, who stood tall and stern, her eyes scanning the group of first years. "Welcome to Hogwarts," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. "In a few moments you will pass through these doors and join your classmates. But first, you must be sorted into your houses. The sorting ceremony will begin shortly. Please follow me." The students followed Professor McGonagall through the grand entrance hall and into the Great Hall. The ceiling was enchanted to look like the night sky, complete with twinkling stars and a crescent moon. 4 long tables were set up, each representing one of the 4 houses: Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. As they lined up in front of the staff table, where the teachers sat, Professor McGonagall placed a worn, old hat on a stool. The hat suddenly came to life, singing a song about the qualities of each house and the importance of unity and bravery. One by one, the students were called up to be sorted. When it was Harry's turn, he approached the stool with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The hat was placed on his head, and he heard a voice in his ear. Difficult, very difficult, the hat mused. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind, either. There's talent, oh my goodness, yes, and a thirst to prove yourself. But where to put you? Not Slytherin, not Slytherin, Harry thought desperately. Not Slytherin, eh? The hat responded. Are you sure? You could be great, you know. It's all here in your head, and Slytherin will help you on the way to greatness, no doubt about that. No? Well, if you're sure, better be Gryffindor. The last word was shouted to the entire hall. Harry took off the hat and walked shakily toward the Gryffindor table. He was relieved to see Ron, Hermione, and Neville already seated there, smiling and clapping for him. As the sorting ceremony continued, Harry felt a sense of belonging and anticipation. He knew that this was just the beginning of his adventures at Hogwarts, and he couldn't wait to see what the future held. The cliff. Everyone, board the boats. Each boat can hold up to 4 people. Hagrid called out as he led the crowd to the lake. The new students climbed into the self-driving boats, which began to glide across the water towards the opposite shore. Gradually, the full view of the enormous castle in the distance came into sight. Wow! Is this Hogwarts? One of the young wizards exclaimed as they disembarked at the dock. The group gathered together, gazing up at the castle perched on the cliff, unable to contain their awe. Dawn. Just stand there. Let's go. You'll get an even better view once we go up. Your jaws will drop, Hagrid said with a smile, waving them forward. Every year, he looked forward to seeing the expressions of amazement on the faces of the new students. But, is that ship in the sky also part of Hogwarts? A freshman asked, staring blankly at the sky behind them. Hearing this, another young wizard followed the freshman's gaze and suddenly shouted, Look, there really is a ship in the sky. Distracted by the commotion, all the young wizards turned to look. Their jaws dropped almost simultaneously. The sky above the Black Lake had suddenly become violently windy, and silver lightning flashed as if a massive thunderstorm was about to break. Out of the sea of clouds, a 3-masted sailboat emerged, heaving and falling as if it were sailing on the ocean. The ship shone with a crystal-clear, light blue brilliance. It had 3 vertical masts, 1 high and 2 lower, each with 3 rows of neatly arranged square sails. A long ram extended from the bow, resembling a narwhal's tusk. Smaller gaff sails connected the foremast to the bow, and 8 long oars protruded from each side of the hull, moving up and down like dragonfly wings. From a distance, the ship looked like a crystal vessel bravely navigating a sea of thunderstorms. Fine lightning bolts leaped between the sails and masts, giving it a ferocious yet elegant appearance. As the ship drew closer to Hogwarts Castle, the young wizards were awestruck by its grandeur. Some of the more timid students even began to cry for their mothers. This guy is just here for work. Is there really a need for such a grand entrance? Hagrid muttered, recognizing the ship's owner. He wasn't particularly surprised, just a bit exasperated. All right, don't just stand there. That ship poses no threat to Hogwarts and won't harm you. Now follow me back to the castle, Hagrid shouted to the freshmen. It took a while for everyone to tear their eyes away from the strange ship. Hagrid, do you know that ship? Is it part of Hogwarts too? Harry asked, his voice trembling. He was so frightened that he could barely move his legs. While Hogwarts on the cliff inspired awe, the spaceship was downright terrifying, as if the sky itself was about to collapse. Harry's question piqued the curiosity of all the young wizards, and they all looked at Hagrid, even Malfoy. You'll find out soon enough. It's just a ship that can fly, nothing more, Hagrid said, rolling his eyes. He then waved his hand, urging everyone to follow him. Under Hagrid's constant urging, the group of young wizards stumbled up the stone steps, frequently looking back at the approaching flying boat. The shock it had delivered was too strong to ignore, and it was drawing closer and closer to the castle. Upon arriving at Hogwarts, the students' attention was completely captivated by their surroundings. Hagrid managed to shepherd everyone into the entrance hall of the castle, where Professor McGonagall was waiting, looking rather impatient. "Why did it take so long?" McGonagall asked, casting a critical eye at Hagrid, who was leading the new students. She had been waiting for quite some time, and was beginning to worry that something might have happened to them on the way. "Didn't you see that thing in the sky?" Herding this group of children onto the boats was no easier than driving a pack of very hungry T-bow warthogs, Hagrid replied, shrugging helplessly. "How could I not notice?" Professor McGonagall shook her head in exasperation. The enchantment simulating the sky in the Great Hall nearly broke, and everyone inside thought a storm was coming. "I'm starting to regret inviting him back." "It's too late for regrets now, isn't it?" Hagrid said with a chuckle, ever the optimist. "I'll leave these freshmen with you. I need to go back and keep an eye on the boats. That guy has a bit of a temper." "Tell him to come up quickly," McGonagall snapped, glancing reproachfully at Hagrid. "It's bad enough that you're almost late. Now you're nearly delaying the sorting ceremony." "Why don't you tell him yourself later? He wrote to me saying he brought some delicious food," Hagrid said, rubbing his stomach with a grin before turning to leave. "You were bought off so easily," McGonagall muttered, casting another glance at Hagrid's retreating back. She then turned her attention to the group of nervous first-years. "All right, in a moment, you will pass through these doors and join the other students. But before you can take your seats, you must be sorted into your houses. There is Gryffindor." McGonagall began, explaining the sorting ceremony and the rules regarding house points and the house cup. She wasn't sure if the young wizards were paying attention, given their recent scare, but she continued with her duties nonetheless. After finishing her explanation, she instructed them to wait for a while and then turned back into the Great Hall. End of this chapter. Chapter 631, The Sorting Ceremony. Without keeping the young wizards waiting for too long, Professor McGonagall reappeared and led them into the Great Hall. The 4 long tables were already filled with students who either shifted their gaze towards the newcomers or looked up at the enchanted ceiling. The ceiling, mimicking the weather outside, was covered with flashing thunderclouds. Although there was no sound of thunder, the oppressive atmosphere was palpable. Merlin's beard, "The sky was clear when we arrived. How could it have changed so quickly? I think there might be something wrong with the magic on the roof," some seated students muttered among themselves. The new students, hearing these discussions, wanted to tell them that the weather outside had indeed changed and was even more terrifying than what was shown on the ceiling. However, Professor McGonagall, who had already reached the front of the hall, did not give them much time to discuss. "All freshmen, come here. Before the sorting ceremony begins, Principal Dumbledore wants to say a few words to everyone." Dumbledore stood up and addressed the hall. "Before the start of the new school year, there are a few points that everyone should pay attention to. Except for individual course arrangements, no students are allowed to enter the Forbidden Forest. Especially this year, as you will occasionally have classes next to the Forbidden Forest. Also," Dumbledore continued, "our caretaker, Mr. Filch, asked me to remind you that the corridor on the right side of the 4th floor is also a forbidden area. If you don't want to meet a dreadful fate, please avoid it. Finally, I would like to solemnly announce to everyone that tactical training will be added as a compulsory course at Hogwarts this school year." "Sure enough, we have a new tactical training course this year," Fred whispered excitedly to his brother. "And this year, this class might be held in the Forbidden Forest, or at least next to it," George added, having caught the implication in Dumbledore's words. After Dumbledore's announcement, the students began to whisper among themselves. Many had heard rumors about the new tactical training course, but the confirmation still came as a surprise. They looked curiously at the faculty seats, trying to spot the new professor, but were soon disappointed to see only familiar faces. "Although that gentleman hasn't arrived yet," Dumbledore paused, "I want to introduce to you the new professor of tactical training for this school year." Just as Dumbledore was about to continue, the door at the back of the auditorium was suddenly pushed open. Everyone turned to see a handsome young man in a dark, formal suit walking in. While most of the students were curious about his identity, some in the hall suddenly changed their expressions, eyes filled with disbelief. These were the students who recognized Anduin from the newspapers, and many were 6th and 7th year students who had not yet graduated. They remembered Anduin leading the Slytherin house with vigor. Although it had been a couple of years since then, the memory of their dynamic senior was still fresh. Especially the senior Slytherin students, who had been chatting and laughing moments before, now fell silent, their eyes fixed on the new arrival. When they saw that the person who entered was the intimidating chief, they trembled all over. Quickly, they shut their mouths, sat up straight, and their expressions turned serious. Some even began to straighten their clothes, sweating profusely. Since Anduin graduated from Hogwarts, Slytherin had lost someone who could command respect from all the students. Initially, Joey Farley, a loyal fan of Anduin, barely maintained order. But as these senior wizards graduated one after another, the discipline at Slytherin gradually weakened. However, many fine traditions still survived, such as evening self-study and the annual Academy Cup. The younger wizards at the same table were puzzled by the exaggerated reactions of their seniors. What's going on? It's just a wizard who walked in, not a devil. Why such a big reaction? This only heightened everyone's curiosity about the visitor's identity. Anduin, who had entered the auditorium, first glanced indifferently at the dean's table, then at the young wizards around him, and finally set his eyes on the freshman in front of the podium. He noticed Ron, with his bright hair and distinctive features, Neville, whom he had met a week ago, and Harry, who stood out in the crowd. After a moment of surprise, Anduin withdrew his gaze and walked towards the faculty dining table. He nodded to several professors on the stage and then took a seat next to Snape. Dumbledore smiled slightly upon seeing Anduin and continued, "As you can see, the professor in charge of the Hogwarts Tactical Training course for the new school year is Mr. Anduin Wilson." Whoa! The little wizards, though many had never seen Anduin, were familiar with his name. The room immediately buzzed with excitement upon hearing Dumbledore mention Anduin. What? This Mr. Wilson is actually in charge of our new class? Wow, the boss of Silver Flash Trading Company is going to be a professor. Hogwarts really is something else. I'll write to my family. Mr. Wilson is at Hogwarts. Do you think he'll give us discounts on certain products? Like blind boxes or something? Even the freshmen waiting to be sorted began to whisper among themselves. This is the famous Mr. Wilson, Harry asked curiously, looking at Anduin with bright eyes. Yes, he is Uncle Wilson, but why is he here? Goodness, Uncle Wilson is going to be our professor. Ron was shocked, but soon laughed excitedly. Hey, with him, I'll definitely get high marks in my new course. Come on, how could someone like Mr. Wilson show favoritism to an acquaintance? Hermione looked at Ron with disdain. It's the greatest honor to have the founder of this new discipline teach us personally. You think of such boring things. No one will think you're dumb if you don't speak, Ron retorted, glaring at Hermione. Seeing that Anduin's mere presence had caused chaos in the auditorium, McGonagall at the podium couldn't help but give Anduin a stern look before shouting, "Silence!" Once everyone quieted down, McGonagall continued the sorting ceremony. When I call your name, come to the front. I will place the sorting hat on your head, and it will determine your house. Hannah Abbott! McGonagall began the sorting ceremony proficiently, while Anduin greeted the professors beside him. Long time no see, Senior Quirrell. I heard that you will leave your position in Muggle Studies this year and start teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts. This course is not an easy job. The principal wanted me to take it when I graduated, but I declined, Anduin said, looking at Quirrell, who was wearing a purple hood. Although he was not very familiar with him, he acknowledged his presence. Anduin was familiar with this former senior. He had spent at least 3 years in the spell club and had even learned the amplifying spell from him. Based on that, he developed the echo spell and the infrasonic curse. Good morning, Anduin. I'm just teaching this class for 1 year. I believe the principal will find a more suitable candidate next year, Quirrell stammered, his eyes avoiding Anduin's gaze. Quirrell, You're not a coward, Snape interjected, glaring at Anduin. You really like to show off, don't you? I've heard about your antics outside. You even sailed a boat over the school arrogantly. You can't blame me for that. The ship is my base. I can't just leave it somewhere else. Besides, it's not usually like this. I still can't control Leona's temper. When she's emotionally stable, it's not so scary, Anduin replied, smiling apologetically at Snape. Humph, you always have an excuse. I don't believe you can't steer a broken ship with your abilities, Snape retorted, curling his lips in dissatisfaction. Don't blame me for not warning you. If she hears you slandering her, you'll regret it, Anduin teased with a smile. While that, I were chatting, the sorting ceremony for the new school year at Hogwarts came to an end. As expected, Malfoy was sorted into Slytherin, while Harry, Ron, Neville, and Hermione were sorted into Gryffindor. The Gryffindors were especially excited to welcome Harry Potter, cheering enthusiastically. After the freshmen were sorted and settled, Dumbledore stood up and announced with a smile, "Now, let the banquet begin." Immediately, a large amount of delicious food appeared on the dining tables in the Great Hall. Everyone began to feast, with many young wizards diving in eagerly. However, the senior students in Slytherin were unusually cautious, eating in silence and barely daring to breathe. This behavior puzzled the other Slytherin students and caught the attention of students from other houses, who frequently glanced back, wondering what had caused such a sudden change. End of this chapter. Chapter 632, Gathering. Look, you scared them quite a bit, Snape remarked, glancing at Anduin. I didn't expect that after all these years, the pressure you bring is still so strong. So, what are your plans now that you're back? Are you going to keep an eye on them? There's an old Eastern proverb that goes, if you're not in your position, you can't find your way. I'm not a Slytherin prefect anymore, and I don't have the time to keep tabs on the snake court. Anduin replied with a smile, placing a piece of lamb on his plate. He spoke with an air of indifference. Then they might have to thank you, Snape sneered. Despite his words, Snape felt a twinge of regret. With Anduin, Slytherin had been invincible. He had hoped Anduin would continue to bring glory to the snake court upon his return, but that was clearly wishful thinking. While everyone was happily enjoying the delicious food, a few people in the auditorium were frowning, particularly the senior wizards of Slytherin. It's the evil spirit. It's actually the elder brother who came to teach us. We're doomed. Fred said in despair, holding his cheeks and staring at the food in front of him without any appetite. It's over. Why did he come to Hogwarts? I thought our new professor would be some kind of auror, George grumbled, nearly turning the steak on his plate into mush. What? Is there anything wrong with Mr. Wilson becoming our professor? Harry asked, looking puzzled as he stuffed a few chicken legs into his mouth. That's right, Ron added, scratching his head in confusion. Isn't Uncle Wilson usually very kind to us? Why do you two look like you've seen a ghost? That's because you were young at the time, and you didn't live with Brother Anduin, Percy, the youngest of the Weasley family, laughed. The two of them were scolded by him a lot back then. You'd better be careful. When he's serious, he doesn't care about closeness or distance. Huh? Ron was still thinking about being taken care of by Anduin in the future. But why haven't I heard you mention it? Who would mention such a shameful thing? Is it a good response to being thrown around? I don't think even a top student like Percy could please him. If you don't believe me, just wait and see, George retorted, not wanting to be outdone by Percy. Isn't that because you guys are too naughty? Percy said, amused. I think this is called one thing falling one thing. Yes, our respected Mr. Prefect. Do you need me to hand you your favorite toilet brush? You brushed it with great relish back then. Fred shot back. You. Percy glared at him. Seeing his brothers bickering, Harry couldn't help but be curious about their past experiences. But what puzzled him even more was the way they addressed Anduin. Why do you call Mr. Wilson Big Brother, but Ron calls him Uncle? Hey, if you want to blame someone, blame Ron for being late to understand. We called him Brother Anduin before he became Ginny's godfather, and we didn't bother to change it later. Speaking of which, Bill and Charlie went to school with him. They didn't go to work at Silver Flash Trading Company with him, George explained, returning to his usual foolish look. I remember my elder brother mentioned it to them, but both Bill and Charlie wanted to explore the world first. So, Bill was introduced to Gringotts by Anduin, and Charlie went to Romania to raise dragons. It is said that one of the shareholders of the dragon farm is an old acquaintance of Anduin. If it weren't for him, you wouldn't be able to eat so many dragon meat sausages, Percy explained seriously to his younger brothers. The three Weasley brothers reminisced about past events, while Harry and Ron listened with keen interest, occasionally exchanging surprised glances. Was Mr. Wilson really that formidable in his youth? Harry couldn't help but curiously observe the man at the front desk, who appeared both handsome and faintly majestic. However, his attention was soon drawn to the gloomy, long-haired wizard beside him. Ouch! As Harry's eyes briefly met Snape's, a dull pain suddenly throbbed in his forehead scar, and the shining on his chest emitted a faint glow, with electric arcs crackling on its surface. Harry snapped back to reality. The pain gradually subsided after he averted his gaze, though the shining continued to discharge slightly. I didn't expect Senior Quirrell to go to Albania this year. I remember there are many primitive jungles there, teeming with dark, magical creatures like vampires and werewolves. Harry overheard Anduin chatting with Quirrell about his recent activities. I just encountered several vampires there, so I was studying how to resist them, Quirrell said, pointing to the hood on his head with an awkward smile. So you're relying on that garlic-smelling hood to ward off vampires? Anduin thought, rolling his eyes. He then pulled out a talisman and offered, "How about I give you a sun amulet? I crafted it using holy light magic I learned from the Holy See. It's highly effective against dark creatures with impressive lethality." Ah, Quirrell was taken aback. He had only been making small talk, never expecting Anduin to be so generous. But in his current situation, how could he dare accept such an item, especially one with impressive lethality? No need, I'll continue. My own research, Quirrell stammered, genuinely nervous. All right then, but don't hesitate to ask if you need anything, Anduin replied, respecting Quirrell's scholarly pursuit. At that moment, Dumbledore, noting the time, turned to Anduin, who nodded in confirmation. Attention, everyone, Dumbledore announced, clearing his throat as he approached the podium. Today's dinner is coming to an end, but before we move on to my favorite part, the school song, Professor Anduin Wilson has a few announcements. Professor Wilson has something to say? The young wizards whispered curiously. It was unusual for anyone other than Dumbledore or Professor McGonagall to speak at the opening ceremony. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Anduin calmly approached the podium. His clear, sharp voice resonated throughout the auditorium. Listen up, everyone. I'll say this only once. After dinner, the 5th grade prefects are responsible for escorting their housemates to their common rooms. The 6th and 7th grade prefects are to stay behind. Additionally, no one is allowed to eat before 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. Gather in the entrance hall wearing summer training clothes. That's all. With that, Anduin returned to his seat, leaving the young wizards in the auditorium stunned. Dumbledore resumed the podium with a smile. You all heard Professor Wilson. Please follow his instructions. Now, let's move on to the long-awaited school song session. What? Gathering early tomorrow morning? This has never happened at Hogwarts before. Should I say this is truly Brother Anduin's doing? Fred shook his head and muttered as the Gryffindors returned to the common room. I can't believe it. Do you know what Professor Wilson is planning? Is it just tomorrow we need to assemble early, or will this be a regular thing? Harry, following behind the twins, looked puzzled. You're asking us? How would we know? George shrugged helplessly. Maybe the prefects in grades 6 and 7 can tell us, but honestly, if we have to gather this early every day, just send me to see Merlin now. Stop talking nonsense, Percy interjected, having already changed his tone to address Anduin as Professor. Since the professor made such an arrangement, he must have his reasons. George and Fred exchanged glances before starting to mock Percy again. Harry, standing nearby, felt that every minute of today had been filled with new experiences. Meeting his new friend Ron, encountering Malfoy with another legendary item, seeing the intimidating lightning spaceship, participating in the fascinating sorting ceremony, meeting the bearded but intriguing headmaster, and observing the mysterious and stern Anduin Wilson. No one knew what Anduin had discussed with the 6th and 7th grade prefa CTS that night. They only noticed that these prefects returned to the common room very late. The next morning, Harry was gradually awakened by someone shaking him. Rubbing his eyes, he saw that Neville, his dorm mate, was already dressed and looking anxious. "Wake up! The meeting time Professor Wilson mentioned is almost here. We can't be late." Neville hurried off to wake the others, and Harry, now fully alert, remembered the early gathering. He quickly got out of bed, dressed in a rush, and helped Neville wake the rest of their dorm mates. As the clock neared 7 o'clock, the four of them joined the chaotic flow of students heading to the courtyard in front of the castle. There, they found Anduin already dressed in a tactical uniform, holding a clipboard, and standing on the steps of the front hall. He stared coldly at the group of little wizards who were on the verge of being late. Chapter 633, Explain It, Request for Monthly Ticket Recommendation. Despite the urgency, only the majority of students managed to gather on time. A small number were either just waking up or still on their way. At this moment, hundreds of young wizards were assembled in the open space in a chaotic manner. Many were not fully dressed, their faces haggard from lack of sleep, and some stood there with sleepy, squinting eyes. When Harry and his roommates arrived in the courtyard, they first found the twins and other familiar Gryffindor students. They stood together aimlessly, their eyes blankly fixed on the professor standing on the steps. "It's almost time," Anduin announced, checking his pocket watch. He then shouted, "Attention, everyone! Now start to line up based on your houses, 7 rows for each house, and stand in order of grades. Prefects, follow the organizational discipline I explained to you yesterday." He turned his head towards the castle exit. "From now on, all latecomers will stay aside and are not allowed to move without my permission. Gemma, you are responsible for keeping an eye on them." "Yes, Professor," responded Gemma Farley, the 7th grade prefect of Slytherin and cousin to Joy Farley. She moved to the entrance to gather the latecomers. The prefects from the other houses quickly sprang into action, shouting for their housemates to line up. It was clear they had received Anduin's instructions the previous night. These prefects, having lived and trained with Anduin at school, were well aware of his methods and executed his orders without complaint. After all, this was the man who had single-handedly elevated Slytherin to the top. They wouldn't dare waste a word. Under the somewhat rough command of the prefects, the courtyard was soon divided into 4 camps: Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, Gryffindor, and Slytherin. Each camp was arranged in order from the lower grades to the higher, with even the heights neatly divided. The queue situation revealed the discipline of each house. Slytherin, once managed by Anduin, was the most orderly. It seemed the senior wizards had warned their juniors the previous night as they stood neatly and silently. Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff followed in terms of discipline. The students of Ravenclaw were relatively quiet, while the Hufflepuffs, being honest and obedient, appeared peaceful. The least disciplined were the Gryffindors. They stood crookedly in line and couldn't help whispering to each other, their lively nature on full display. However, Anduin didn't mind this too much. As a professor of tactical training, he was more concerned with them meeting the subject goals he set rather than nitpicking every detail. Of course, basic discipline was still necessary at the start of training. Anduin glanced at the queue and shouted, "Everyone listen to the command, silence now, and stand in line properly. This is especially directed at Gryffindor." Reprimanded by Anduin, the senior students of Gryffindor were the first to worry. Anduin was not like other professors who merely deducted points. Seeing the embarrassment of the Gryffindors, many Slytherins couldn't help but sneer, given their historical conflicts. Neither Iraq nor Ibrahimovic could fully control the situation. Of course, Anduin noticed everyone's behavior. Once everyone in the courtyard had settled down, he turned his attention to the latecomers. This group consisted of roughly 80 students, most of whom were young wizards under the 3rd grade. Their self-control was indeed relatively poor. If Harry hadn't had Neville's help, he might have been late as well. Among them were Malfoy and his 2 followers, along with several young wizards from Slytherin. These children were used to being pampered and were even more impatient and complaining. They knew that with so many people being late, the professor would likely not hold anyone accountable in the end. Seeing this, Anduin frowned slightly and muttered to himself, "I wanted to keep things simple, but it seems that without some necessary obedience training, there's your thoughts. It's no way to rid them of their bad habits." He then turned his head towards the Slytherin house on the right. "Slytherin's 6th and 7th year prefects, come out!" "Here!" Gemma Farley, who had already returned to the queue, trotted to the front with the other 3 prefects. They stood there nervously, looking at Anduin. "Explain it." Anduin's eyes swept across the 4 of them like a cold knife. "It's fine for other houses, but why is someone in Slytherin late?" "This." Gemma, the representative of the prefects, turned pale. She opened her mouth but couldn't utter a word. She knew what Anduin was asking. Back then, Slytherins always advanced and retreated together. There would never be such a thing as abandoning their companions. "So it's like this." Anduin nodded and shook his head indifferently. "In your eyes, I no longer see the desire for honor. It seems that what I have said to you is like playing the piano to a cow." "I'm sorry, Chief. This situation will not happen again." Gemma, full of fear, shouted to the chief, her voice filled with guilt. It's too late to say this now." Anduin sneered and then shouted, "All Slytherin students in grades 6 and 7, step forward and get ready for push-ups." Yes, the senior Slytherin students didn't hesitate at all. They immediately got down on the ground after responding. Not only were the rest of the Slytherin students shocked, but even the young wizards from other houses were horrified by this scene. "What does the late arrival of freshmen have to do with you? And why are you so obedient, not even offering an excuse? And what is this so-called push-up?" Especially the Gryffindor freshmen, who were already next to the senior wizards in Slytherin, were surprised to see 2 rows of people beside them suddenly get down on the ground. Each person counts 100 times. "Louder!" Anduin turned his head and looked ahead again, ignoring them, and just shouted very casually, 1, 2, 3. The Slytherin wizards began to count aloud without even frowning, and their voices were very neat. They started doing push-ups in an extremely standard posture, as if they were used to it. However, even for Slytherins who had experienced the Anduin era, 100 push-ups were not a small number. Initially, everyone moved uniformly, but after more than 50 push-ups, they began to falter. After 70 or 80 times, many were already sweating, struggling to complete each movement. But what shocked everyone was that even though they were exhausted, they still performed the movements with precision. But Anduin was clearly not looking at them. Even if they were a little lazy, what did it matter if they missed 1 or 2 counts? The wizards of the Snake Court behaved like cold, unfeeling machines. Even those who stood up after their punishment merely gasped for breath without uttering a single complaint or even blinking an eye. Witnessing this, the group of young wizards who arrived late, led by Malfoy, were already in a state of panic. Watching these senior wizards being punished for their mistakes was deeply unsettling for these inexperienced children. Even Malfoy turned pale with fright, and many of them were secretly thinking, if the professor is this harsh on those who weren't late, what kind of punishment will we receive? Harry, Ron, and the wizards of the Lion House, who witnessed the punishment up close, broke into a cold sweat. Harry swallowed nervously and glanced at Anduin with apprehension. No wonder the Weasley twins were so afraid of Professor Wilson. Now, Harry was worried about his future at the college. On the other side, Anduin nodded to himself. He had been observing the entire time and was quite impressed with the meticulous execution by the senior wizards. After the wizards of the Snake Court completed their push-ups, Anduin ignored them and turned his indifferent gaze to the latecomers. "Return to your teams. Wizards who are late, remember, this is your last chance." Hearing Anduin's words, the young wizards felt as if they had been pardoned. They rushed into the queues of their respective houses without hesitation. They had thought they were doomed, but no one felt lucky just because Anduin let them off this time. After witnessing the previous scene, everyone was certain that the new professor would not show any leniency when it came to discipline. "All right, everyone is here," Anduin said, nodding as he referred to the record sheet in his hand. "Let's get down to business." End of this chapter. Chapter 6 and 34, Open Class. I called everyone together today because I have two important announcements to make, Anduin said, his hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed the crowd with a stern expression. The young wizards, now fully awake, stood in rapt attention, the silence so profound that many scarcely dared to breathe. First, today's gathering will serve as an on-site public class. I will briefly explain the basic principles of the Wilson training method in tactical training. Everyone, pay attention. Anduin's voice rang out clearly. The young wizards immediately perked up at his words. Many of them, especially those with a passion for learning like Hermione, looked at Anduin with eager eyes, regretting that they hadn't brought their textbooks to take notes. To explain the training method, you must first understand the three basic elements that affect magical power, or a wizard's magical ability, Anduin began, his tone concise and authoritative. These elements are magic power reserve, magic power sensitivity, and spirit. The magic power reserve is the simplest to understand. It determines how much magical energy a wizard can cast. Although many factors influence the magic power reserve, the most crucial is the wizard's physique. Simply put, the stronger and healthier your body, the higher your magic reserve will be. The young wizards exchanged glances, many of them hearing this concept for the first time. Doubt flickered in their eyes. I know you may have some questions. Since this is a class, you are allowed to raise your hands to ask, Anduin said, his tone relaxing slightly. Several hands shot up immediately, most of them belonging to Ravenclaw students. Anduin pointed to a Ravenclaw witch. Professor, does your theory apply to all magical creatures? The student asked. Most magical creatures follow this rule, but it also depends on the biological condition of the creature, Anduin replied casually. Then why does a creature with a powerful physique like a giant have such mediocre spellcasting abilities? The witch asked, following up with another question. This relates to the next concept I'm going to explain, Anduin said with a slight smile. That is magic sensitivity, which may be relatively unfamiliar to you. Although this concept was proposed long ago, explanations in the wizarding world have been quite general. Let me clarify. Magic power sensitivity refers to a wizard's understanding of internal and external magic power. In simple terms, it means whether you have an affinity for magic power and whether you can accurately perceive and master it. The strength of this element directly determines your ability to perceive and control magic power. So, even if a creature with slow thinking is full of magic power, if it doesn't know how to use it, it can only act on instinct. Examples include the Tebow warthog, trolls, and the giant you mentioned. The Wilson training method I invented is a means of activating the magic power in a wizard's body through a series of internal and external techniques, thereby increasing magic power sensitivity. Oh, the young wizards exclaimed in unison. Many of them didn't fully understand, but Anduin's explanation gave them a sense of awe. As for the third element, spirit, it can be simply described as emotion and willpower. These directly affect the strength of a wizard's spellcasting. You'll notice that if you're emotionally unstable, the power of your spells can increase significantly. Most wizards understood this point. The more excited or agitated they became, the more potent their magic. At this moment, several young wizards raised their hands, eager to ask more questions. Professor! A voice called out, trying to attract Anduin's attention. It was Hermione, the Gryffindor freshman, standing near the front. Do different emotions have different effects on magic? Today's public class was Hermione's first magic lesson, but she was integrating smoothly. Indeed, they do, Anduin nodded appreciatively. Positive emotions can directly enhance the power of positive magic. Joy and love, for instance, can amplify the strength of many protective and guardian spells. As he spoke, Anduin glanced at Harry, then continued. Extreme emotions like anger can significantly boost attack magic. A firm will and strong determination can influence most magical outcomes. Black magic, however, is primarily fueled by negative emotions such as hatred. This type of magic often transfers negative energy back to the caster, which is why ordinary magic schools do not teach it to young wizards with undeveloped minds. The most extreme forms, like the unforgivable curses, are completely banned in the wizarding world. Using these magics frequently can lead to severe mental instability, Anduin added with a contemptuous smile. Take Voldemort, for example. I dare say his mind was almost entirely destroyed by black magic. A collective gasp filled the room as Anduin mentioned Voldemort's name so casually. The little wizards, especially those from Slytherin, fell silent. Their feelings towards the Dark Lord were complex. Some even revered him for his stance on pure-blood wizard rights. But Anduin's words painted him as a madman, and the professor's apparent lack of fear was shocking. Draco Malfoy, raised on Lucius's pure-blood supremacy ideals, was visibly displeased with Anduin's rhetoric. Yet, a seed of doubt lingered. Professor Wilson was an authority in the field, and Draco was torn between his father's teachings and Anduin's words. Ignoring the varied expressions around him, Anduin concluded, these three basic elements, emotions, willpower, and physical fitness, are not only independent but also interrelated. They form a trinity. My training method aims to enhance your magic sensitivity through physical training to strengthen your physique and temper your will. Emotions can be unpredictable, but a firm will is the foundation that determines your lower limit. Only by promoting all three elements together can you fully strengthen your wizarding abilities. This brings me to the main announcement this morning, Anduin said with a sneer. Starting tomorrow, everyone must gather here on time before 7:30 a.m. from Monday to Friday for 30 minutes of basic morning exercises. Afterward, you can return to the Great Hall for breakfast. A chorus of groans erupted from the students. The idea of getting up early every day felt like torture. Many young wizards looked at Anduin with resentment, realizing that his lengthy speech was just a prelude to announcing mandatory morning exercises. Even Harry and Hermione, who admired Anduin, looked dismayed. Ron muttered to Harry in despair, "It's over. You were right. Your prediction came true." At that moment, a little wizard raised his hand high and asked, "Professor, why do we need to do morning exercises?" Without waiting for Anduin to ask, a student spoke up loudly. "We can't come out for morning exercises every day, can we? What if the weather is bad? What if it rains the next day? Everyone will get wet and sick, just like the sky is full of dark clouds now. This is very likely to happen." At this moment, there was indeed a layer of faint, dark clouds floating in the sky, just as the student had said. Everyone was taken aback by the words. "That's right, we can't be forced to get up early when the weather is bad," another student murmured. "You don't need to worry about that," Anduin sneered, pulling out his wand. He pointed it at the sky with determination, and a thick bolt of lightning shot straight from the tip of his wand, piercing through the clouds and revealing the warm, early morning sun. "With me here, there will be no bad weather." The little wizards were all shocked by Anduin's display of power. This level of spellcasting was simply terrifying in their eyes, and after hearing his words, they were filled with despair. "Silence!" Anduin yelled. "The matter has been decided. At the same time, I advise everyone not to think about using excuses such as illness or injury to avoid training. I have hundreds of effective treatment methods here. They may not taste good, but you can try them. In addition, don't blame me for not warning you in advance. Starting tomorrow, if you are late or absent, you will be assigned extra training in the afternoon. You will not be allowed to have dinner before the training is over. Do you understand?" "Yes, I understand," the little wizards responded, looking as if they had lost all hope. "Speak up! Do you understand?" Anduin shouted again, clearly dissatisfied. "Understood." Scared by Anduin, everyone straightened up and answered loudly. "Very good," Anduin nodded in satisfaction. "Next, I will announce the second reason for convening you today, which is to conduct a comprehensive physical examination on all of you this morning." Physical examination? The little wizards were all stunned by this unfamiliar term. Only a few Muggle-born students like Hermione understood what he meant. "That's right. The prefects will show you the way. Professional medical examiners have been arranged in several classrooms in the main tower. All you have to do is follow their instructions and undergo the examination," Anduin explained briefly. End of this chapter. Chapter 635, Physical Examination. "So, what does Professor Wilson mean by a physical examination?" Ron asked, puzzled, as the Gryffindor students entered the castle. He looked at the prefect leading the way. "I don't know the details," the seventh-year male prefect replied with a helpless shrug, showing the list in his hand. Last night, Professor Wilson just trained us on how to organize the queue and gave us this checklist. He told us to guide you properly. A physical examination is just that, a physical examination. Hermione interjected. My dad is a dentist, so I've heard of it. It usually involves a series of tests like blood draws in hospitals in the Muggle world to check if there's anything wrong with your body. But we're just students, not patients. Why do we need a physical examination? Ron asked, looking distressed. Why did Uncle Wilson become so strange after becoming a professor? I used to think he was very kind. Uncle Wilson is very strict when he's serious, but he's usually very nice, and his cooking is delicious, Neville said with a genuine smile. What? Does Neville usually have contact with this Professor Wilson? Harry asked, surprised. He knew from Ron that Neville knew Anduin, but he didn't know much about their relationship. Yeah, Neville nodded. Uncle Wilson is a friend of my parents. He's a kind person. When I occasionally go to his house to play, I receive some training. Uncle says it's to lay the foundation for me. Oh? Have you learned a lot of magic from him? Have you ever broken up the clouds? That sounds so cool, Ron asked excitedly. No, Neville replied, shaking his head in embarrassment. Uncle Wilson said that before you get your own wand, it's best not to cast spells at will. It's an act that can easily hurt yourself. He usually just has me run, swim, and practice with swords. Sword practice? Hermione frowned. You're a wizard. Why use a melee weapon like a sword? Doesn't it seem clumsy? I don't know. Maybe Uncle is just exercising my physical fitness. Anyway, I'm always very tired after every training, Neville admitted. It's over. After hearing what you said, I can already imagine how miserable our life will be, Ron sighed, looking defeated. Stop talking nonsense. We're here, the seventh-year prefect called out. Next, the boys will enter the number 1 medical examination room, and the girls will enter the number 2 physical examination room. Hurry up, everyone. After this, we have to go elsewhere. The male and female prefects began organizing the queue, guiding the students to enter in an orderly manner. The extra students continued to line up outside. Meanwhile, the 6th-year prefects waited at the other exit of the classroom to guide the students to the next location after their examination. These procedures had been rehearsed in advance the previous night, so everything ran smoothly. The first physical examination room could accommodate 5 people at a time, so the testing speed was quite efficient. Soon it was the turn of everyone in Harry's dormitory. As they walked into the room, they noticed it had been remodeled from a classroom. Several desks were piled up to the side, and a row of equipment with unknown functions was placed in front. Harry recognized one of the devices. It looked similar to the scales he'd seen in the Muggle world. Brother Ibrahimovic, I didn't expect you to be here to inspect us. Don't you need to be at the Silver Flash Trading Company? Ron shouted excitedly upon entering the room. Ah, it's Ron and Neville, Ibrahimovic said with a smile, recognizing the newcomers. The business at the company is running smoothly, so I have some time to help out here. The dog barked orders at them, but Harry quickly grabbed his arm to calm him down. Let's just get this over with, Harry whispered, trying to avoid any unnecessary conflict. Hog, still grinning, gestured towards the various pieces of equipment. All right, listen up. First, you'll each take turns on the treadmill. We'll measure your stamina and endurance. After that, you'll walk across the balance beam to test your coordination. Finally, you'll use the comprehensive machine to assess your strength. Ron, still fuming, muttered under his breath, but complied. He stepped onto the treadmill, and Hog started the machine. The treadmill began at a slow pace, gradually increasing in speed. Ron's face turned red as he struggled to keep up, but he managed to stay on until Hog finally stopped the machine. Not bad, Weasley, Hog said with a smirk. Next. Neville went next, his face pale with anxiety. He stumbled a bit on the treadmill, but managed to complete the task. Harry followed, his determination evident as he pushed himself to his limits. After the treadmill, they moved on to the balance beam. Ron wobbled a bit but made it across without falling. Neville, however, lost his balance halfway and had to start over. Harry, with his seeker reflexes, crossed the beam with ease. Finally, they approached the comprehensive machine. Ron grunted as he lifted the dumbbells, his muscles straining. Neville struggled but managed to lift a few weights. Harry, though not as strong as Ron, showed impressive determination and managed to complete the task. Hog recorded their results, nodding in approval. Not bad, boys. You've got potential. Now, get out of here and head to your next checkpoint. As they left the room, Ron couldn't help but grumble, I can't believe we have to go through all this just for training, and that dog Hog acting all high and mighty. Harry chuckled, patting Ron on the back. It's all part of the process, Ron, and besides, it's kind of fun, isn't it? Neville, still catching his breath, nodded in agreement. Yeah, I guess it is, and if it helps us get stronger, then it's worth it. They continued to the next checkpoint, feeling a mix of exhaustion and excitement. The training was tough, but they knew it would prepare them for the challenges ahead. Hog looked at him and sneered, You liar! You told us that we could get a good blind box with some transfer ritual, didn't you? You said that, Hog replied, waving his hands dismissively. It's not my fault you're gullible enough to believe such nonsense. Besides, this is between me and your two brothers. What does it have to do with you? Ah, Hog suddenly realized, those two boys must have told you what I said. George and Fred were the ones who lied to you. Why are you angry at me? Do you want to challenge me? Fine, I'll show you how powerful Master Hog is. With that, Hog stretched out his paw with a sneer, putting on a vicious look. Ron, realizing he couldn't even win an argument with a dog, could only stomp his feet in frustration. Come here for a checkup as soon as you're done talking. Your time, Mr. Hog, is precious. Hog pointed at Harry with a proud expression. You come here quickly. Me? Oh! Harry, still dazed, walked forward and stood opposite Hog, looking at the dog in confusion. Stretch out your hands and hold the big ball in front of you. Yes, just like that, Hog instructed. Harry followed the instructions, holding the crystal ball as directed. Hog, holding a recording board, carefully observed the changes in the crystal ball and took notes. What are you checking? Do I just keep doing this? Harry asked, puzzled after holding the crystal ball for about 10 seconds. Hey, since you seem more agreeable, Master Hog will tell you. I'm giving you a magic sensitivity rating, Hog explained, narrowing his eyes triumphantly. It's not as simple as you think. The previous physical examination was just a normal checkup. Anyone with eyes can record data, but here, the inspector needs to rely on keen insight and rich experience to discern the pros and cons of your various qualities. To be honest, Harry couldn't tell if Hog was being truthful or just boasting. Either way, the dog's face in front of him looked as smug as ever. End of this chapter. Chapter 636, Neglect, Request for a Recommended Monthly Ticket. All right, this project is over, Hog announced, raising his head and pointing to the side. Go run on that equipment as fast as you can and use all your strength. Harry looked at the machine, which resembled a treadmill. After following the instructions to stand on it, he discovered a movable conveyor belt under his feet. Yes, run quickly. This project is designed to allow people to run while mobilizing magic power, but since you've just started school, you probably don't know how to use magic power yet, Hog explained, instructing the next person to touch the crystal ball. He tilted his head and replied. Harry, hearing this, could only comply. He tentatively walked on the treadmill twice and found the conveyor belt very responsive, ensuring he could keep up. He then put all his energy into running as fast as he could. However, Harry's weak physical condition couldn't sustain the effort for long, and he was out of breath after sprinting for just a few dozen seconds. Hog, noticing Harry's speed slowing down, stopped him and recorded something on the treadmill. After Harry rested for a while, Hog instructed him to stand on the balance beam and try to cross it. Although the balance beam was as wide as a fist, its height of 1 meter made Harry a bit apprehensive. After walking a few meters, he felt unsteady and fell off the side. Just when Harry thought he was going to hit the ground, he found that the air on both sides of the balance beam acted like a natural air cushion, catching him firmly. Hog didn't give up after one attempt and asked Harry to walk the balance beam a few more times. However, Harry fell almost every time, managing to walk only 6 or 7 meters at best. In contrast, Ron and Neville performed much better. Not only were their running speeds and times impressive, but they also managed to cross the balance beam. Ron succeeded after 4 attempts, while Neville crossed it on his second try. The last piece of equipment resembled a seated press machine found in gyms. Hog first asked Harry to sit on it, and then two balloon-shaped objects protruded from the armrest area. Grip those two balls with your hands and use more force. This is to test your grip strength. Why do you have so little strength? Try harder, Hog urged Harry, while closely monitoring the machine's readings. All right, after measuring your grip strength, we'll test your arm strength. See the metal rod above your head? Push it hard. Yes, use all your strength. Under Hog's command, Harry completed several strength tests, including those for his palms, arms, waist, and legs. By the end of the complete set, he was nearly exhausted. They hadn't even had breakfast yet, and now they were running and lifting weights, leaving them utterly fatigued. After everyone finished the entire set of tests, Hog smiled and addressed them. Okay, this concludes the physical examination for you freshmen. The subsequent spell check is only required for second grade and above. Additionally, such a physical examination will be conducted every 6 months. If your next test results are worse than the current ones, you should be careful. Does this mean our medical examination is over? Harry asked nervously. That's right. Once you leave, you can eat and do whatever you want. You should know that there are no classes this morning, Hog replied, urging them, hurry up, don't waste my time here. Harry and the others exchanged happy glances and quickly left. Hog, who remained behind, frowned as he looked at the record board in his hand, muttering to himself, why is Harry's? His physical fitness is so poor, he's not at the same level as his peers at all. Hog shook his head helplessly before arrogantly commanding the next group of students. The school-wide physical examination lasted almost the entire morning. The 4 branches alternated between the 3 major tests, making the experience novel for everyone. By lunchtime, the young wizards were still discussing the event in the auditorium. So, you were beaten by Hog during the second test? Harry asked, looking at the scratched twins. He tried to suppress a laugh, feeling it would be unkind. It's really evil, George winced, covering his left cheek. Do you think we could avoid trouble with Hog after seeing that bastard? How much pocket money did he cheat us out of? And Ron, you can still laugh now? Ha, the two of you couldn't even beat a dog together? Isn't that a bit useless? Ron, less reserved than Harry, covered his mouth and laughed openly. We followed the rules and didn't use our wands. Otherwise, he would have been in trouble, Fred said firmly, despite the 3 or 4 paw prints on his face. And that bastard is as strong as if he were on steroids. It's scary. George and I tried to get close to him and deal with him secretly, but Hog attacked us without warning, as if he knew our intentions. Really? Ron's smile turned awkward. He realized that his earlier talkativeness might have led to the twins' sudden attack. Harry, sensing the tension, quickly changed the subject. By the way, what was the 3rd test? I heard from Hog that it was a spell-casting test. The last test was more interesting than the previous 2, George began. The person in charge was a house elf in a tactical suit. She asked us to use all the spells we knew on a humanoid target, including self-defense spells, transformation spells, levitation spells, and more. They recorded the values. I heard that senior wizards had to cast the Iron Armor Curse to withstand attacks. George's storytelling captivated everyone, with Fred adding details now and then. Harry and the others listened with great interest. Unfortunately, I don't know the purpose of this physical examination. If it affects our final grades, maybe we can find a way to cheat, Fred muttered, squinting. School just started. How could this affect our final grades? And cheating. How would you even cheat in a physical examination? Harry asked, eyes wide with surprise. Who knows what Professor Anduin is thinking? George said, curling his lips. As for cheating, there are ways. For example, we could drink potions to improve our physical fitness test scores. That's not a good idea. What if Uncle Wilson finds out? Ron said awkwardly. Discovered? Fred and George exchanged glances, then shuddered in unison. Yes, we'd be in big trouble if he found out. No, this is really a bad idea. As they chatted, Percy approached them. I just received an instruction from Professor Wilson. Everyone must gather in the auditorium at 7 o'clock tonight and bring their teaching aids list and identity plate. Again? Harry and the others groaned, feeling a bit overwhelmed. At the mention of the assembly, everyone became dejected in an instant. I don't know what it is yet. Why are you so pessimistic? Percy rolled his eyes in exasperation. You said the same thing yesterday, Fred retorted, glaring at him. And what happened? We ended up with the bad news that we had to get up early every day, and our faces were scratched. That's what you deserve. If you and George hadn't provoked the medical examiner, would there be such a consequence? Percy replied, then turned to the others. He needed to convey the news to everyone as soon as possible. Meanwhile, in the latest tactical training office, Anduin was browsing the list collected by the medical examiners while having lunch. When he caught sight of one of the names and the corresponding medical examination results, his face darkened, and his eyebrows furrowed involuntarily. Boom! Anduin slammed his fist on the desk, causing a loud noise that startled Hogg, who was resting nearby. What's the matter, my lord? What caused such a big fuss? Hogg asked, concerned after seeing Anduin's expression. How did Dumbledore answer me back then? He said that Harry would be taken care of properly and safely. What happened? Anduin raised the parchment in his hand angrily. How old is this child who is actually malnourished? There are even hidden wounds on his body. Is that how he took care of him? You mean Harry, Hogg said, understanding why Anduin was so angry. His physical fitness is indeed not very good, but his magic sensitivity is unexpectedly strong. Although his balance and agility are lacking, he has great potential. The only thing missing is strength and speed, which should be improved through training. That doesn't excuse Dumbledore's negligence. If this child had been adopted by me back then, would he be like this? Anduin pushed his lunch plate aside angrily and looked at Hogg. I need you to keep an eye on Harry. I need to observe him for 2 weeks first. If it doesn't work, I'll take him out and take care of him myself. With his current condition, I'm afraid he won't be able to keep up with the training intensity of the main group. Understood, Hogg nodded. What about Ron and Neville? Do you want to include them as well? Their potential is also good, and there is a lot of room for improvement. End of this chapter. Chapter 6 and 37, Attributes. Well, it is indeed possible. Neville has flaws in his personality. Ron has received less attention since he was a child, and his mentality is more impetuous, Anduin mused, lowering his head in thought. After a moment, he decided, how about this? Include all the first-year students as observation targets. In addition to them, screen some potential children. Are you going to give them a little treat? Hogg asked, catching on to Anduin's plan. It's not a small start, Anduin replied with a slight smile. I can imitate Professor Flitwick and set up a tactics club. We'll select some children with better qualities to train. Of course, the main focus will be on Harry, Ron, and Neville. Understood, Hogg responded, then couldn't help but tease. My lord, you are becoming more and more like a professor now. The first day of the new school year passed quickly. As first-year students, Harry and his friends only had one transfiguration class in the afternoon. After the physical examination in the morning, everyone familiarized themselves with the locations of the classrooms in the main castle, so the day's classes went smoothly. However, the interest of these freshmen was not too high at this time. They knew that Anduin was still waiting for them at night, and no one knew what the new professor had planned. Soon, night fell at Hogwarts, and Harry and his group of freshmen stayed in the hall after dinner, waiting for the upcoming meeting. From the mouths of other senior students, Harry and the others learned that professors like Anduin, who often called prefects and students for meetings, were very rare, if not unheard of. Many people quietly discussed that Anduin didn't seem like a new professor at all. He didn't regard himself as an outsider. It was no wonder that everyone grumbled behind his back. On the first day of school, learning that they had to get up early every day was a hard pill to swallow. But no matter how much everyone complained about the new professor, they still dared not disobey his orders. By 7 o'clock in the evening, the auditorium was already full. Anduin appeared punctually, and the deans of the 4 houses were also present, sitting silently on the faculty seats as spectators. The prefects, Count, is there anyone absent? Anduin called out loudly as he hurriedly walked up to the podium. Slytherin should have 187 people, and there are 187 people, all present. Gryffindor should have 214 people, and there are 214 people, all present. After hearing Anduin's inquiry, several prefects reported nervously. The number of students at Hogwarts had obviously increased since Anduin's school days. After a period of time, a large number of wizards had moved back to England. Excluding the seniors who chose to graduate early or do internships, there were a total of 853 students. Hufflepuff had the largest number, followed by Gryffindor, with Ravenclaw having fewer students, and Slytherin always being the house with the smallest number. Seeing that everyone was present, Anduin didn't bother with any opening remarks and said directly, "I'm calling everyone today, not to arrange some training for you, but because there are some things that need to be explained. So, don't get too nervous." A collective sigh of relief was heard from the young wizards in the auditorium. They had been quite intimidated by this new professor. Seeing everyone relax, Anduin smiled and said, "Before the assembly, your prefects should have told you to bring your nameplate. Everyone, take it out now." As soon as they heard the words, everyone complied. Some took out the nameplates from their pockets, while other students retrieved them from their bags. The nameplate to Harry, who glanced at it and saw similar attributes listed for Ron. Name, Ron Weasley. Age, 11 years old, 1st grade. Health status, healthy. Personal attributes, physique, average. Power, average. Agility, intelligence, good. Mana, 75 ticks. Casting ability, none. Study result, none. Violation record, none. "Don't worry, Ron," Harry said, trying to reassure his friend. "We're just starting out. These evaluations will change as we learn and grow." Anduin, noticing the students' reactions, continued. "These nameplates, or silver flash talismans, are designed to help you track your progress and health. They will be invaluable tools throughout your academic journey. As you improve your skills and knowledge, the attributes on your nameplate will update accordingly." The students murmured among themselves, excitement and curiosity evident in their voices. Hermione, who had been quietly observing, raised her hand. "Professor Anduin, how do we improve our attributes? Is it just through our studies?" "Excellent question, Miss Granger," Anduin replied with a nod. "Your attributes will improve through a combination of academic achievements, physical training, and practical experience. The more you engage in various activities, the more you'll see your attributes grow. Remember, this is a tool to help you understand your strengths and areas for improvement." Hermione nodded thoughtfully, already planning how to maximize her potential. Meanwhile, other students were still marveling at the magical technology in their hands. "Now," Anduin said, drawing their attention back to him, "let's move on to the next part of our lesson. These nameplates also have a communication function. You can send messages to your classmates and professors, which will be particularly useful for group projects and staying informed about school events." He demonstrated by sending a message to all the students' nameplates, which lit up with a notification. "See? Simple and efficient. Just remember to use this feature responsibly." The students nodded, some already experimenting with sending messages to each other. Harry and Ron exchanged excited looks, eager to explore all the possibilities these nameplates offered. "One last thing," Anduin added, his tone becoming more serious. "These nameplates are also linked to the school's safety system. In case of an emergency, they can alert the staff and provide your location, so always keep them with you." The gravity of his words wasn't lost on the students. They understood that while the nameplates were fascinating and useful, they also had a critical role in ensuring their safety. "All right, that's enough for today," Anduin concluded with a smile. "Take some time to familiarize yourselves with your silver flash talismans. We'll continue exploring their functions in our next class." As the students began to disperse, Harry couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and anticipation. The magical world was full of wonders, and he was eager to discover them all. Harry glanced at his screen, comparing it to Ron's. The content was almost identical, but the attributes were quite different. Name, Ron Weasley. Age, 11 years old. First status, normal. Personal attributes, physique, normal. Strength, normal. Dexterity, normal. Intelligence, normal. Mana, 103 ticks. This. Harry noticed that Ron's attributes were indeed, as he had said, very ordinary. However, all of Ron's attributes were superior to his own. Harry shared his screen with Ron, who sighed after seeing it. Harry, you are still too thin. But what does intelligence mean? Does it refer to IQ? Why do you have so much more than me? Ron asked, puzzled. I don't really know, Harry replied, shaking his head. He then turned to Neville. Hey, Neville, let's see yours too. Oh, Neville nodded and showed his screen to them, looking a bit embarrassed. Name, Neville Longbottom. Age, 11 years old, first years, normal. Personal attributes, physique, strong, strength, good, dexterity, good, intelligence, weak, mana, 109 ticks. Wow, Neville, you are so strong. All your attributes are higher than ours, Harry said enviously. Compared to Neville, he suddenly felt a bit useless. But my intelligence is only half a star. Does that mean I'm stupid? I thought I just had a poor memory, Neville said, curling his lips in frustration. Don't be so discouraged, Neville, Harry quickly comforted him. We should listen to the professor's explanation. Besides, a person's IQ cannot be measured by some numerical value. As the three of them were talking, they overheard the twins nearby. Merlin's beard, since we're twins, why do you have 2 points more magic power than me? George muttered angrily. I think this is the difference between a genius and an ordinary person. Don't look at it. The difference is only 2 points. I'm afraid the gap between you and me will last a lifetime, Fred said proudly. Don't dream too big. Just give me another month, and I promise I can surpass you. George retorted, giving Fred a dissatisfied look before turning his gaze back to the light screen, stamping on it in frustration. End of this chapter. Chapter 638, The System, Requesting Monthly Recommendations. After witnessing George's actions, Harry seemed to have discovered a new world. Huh? Can this light curtain actually work? Harry observed it closely and extended his finger to touch the screen. To his surprise, he felt a sensation similar to pressing on a soft balloon film. However, if he applied a bit more force, his finger would poke through it. It seemed that this light curtain was in a semi-physical state, tangible but not obstructive. After curiously pressing on the light curtain for a while, Harry found no special reaction and looked at George in puzzlement. What are you pressing on that light curtain? It's nothing special. There are just so many contents on this light curtain. In some places, there are thoughtfully set expansion and zoom buttons, and some contents need to be swiped up. George explained casually while staring at the screen. Is there any difference between your third-grade content and ours? Ron and I have only a short light curtain, and it can be swept away in 1 or 2 glances, Harry asked curiously. There is quite a lot of content in it. Let me show you. Fred's screen is the same as mine, except for the magic power, George said, showing his screen to Harry and the others. Name. Age, 13 years old. Third-grade health status, normal. Personal attributes, physique, normal. Strength, normal. Dexterity, excellent. Intelligence, excellent. Mana, 142 ticks. Casting ability, luminous charm, level 2. Levitation spell, level 2. Unlocking curse, level 3. Polymorph, level 3. Expand. Study results, 2nd grade transfiguration, E, charms year 2, O, expand honor. Elected as the main batsman of the Gryffindor College Quidditch team in the 2nd year. Violation record. Threw a dung bomb in the corridor on the 3rd floor in September of the 2nd grade, deducting 3 points. Caught on a night tour in September of the 2nd grade, deducting 9 points. Had a fight with Slytherin College in October of the 2nd grade, deducting 2 points and adding a week of confinement. Expand. This? Harry, Ron, and Hermione were shocked when they saw the screen George showed them. Compared to theirs, the content for third-year wizards was extensive. There was an expand button under major items like casting ability, which, when pressed, revealed a long list of contents. For example, under casting ability, there were many spell names with corresponding levels. Most were level 2 spells, with a few at levels 1 and 3. In the study results column, George's final grades for all subjects in grades 1 and 2 were recorded clearly. However, the most outrageous item was the violation record. George's violation record was jaw-droppingly long, with more than 20 records in the 1st and 2nd grades alone. The length of this column was longer than the previous 2 combined, with nearly 100 points deducted in total. Merlin's beard, George. Why do you have so many violation records? Didn't Professor McGonagall scold you for losing so many points? Ron asked, speechless. It's all because of our youth and ignorance, George sighed helplessly. We were too careless in the past 2 years and got caught more than 20 times. Fortunately, we've upgraded our strategy this year. Don't worry, Fred and I won't get caught again. Ron and Harry exchanged embarrassed glances. What George called youth and ignorance seemed to mean getting caught too often. Shouldn't they reflect on it and cause less trouble? Anduin, standing at the podium, saw that everyone in the hall had been playing with the Silver Flash amulet for a while and should have become familiar with its operation. He laughed loudly. How is it? Are you satisfied with the function of this item? It's really interesting. I didn't expect it to have records from the first grade to the present. Yes, it's fascinating, but can the violation records be deleted? It's embarrassing to see them. What do these attributes mean? Especially intelligence. Why does my intelligence only have 1 star? I don't think I'm stupid. And those curses, why are they marked with levels? Does it mean that the higher the level, the more powerful they are? After hearing Anduin's question, all the young wizards in the audience immediately began discussing excitedly. Some expressed their love for the Silver Flash amulet, while others voiced dissatisfaction with certain contents. Many raised their own doubts. Seeing this, Anduin nodded slightly. I know you have a lot of questions, and now I'm going to explain everything in detail, so listen carefully. Everyone immediately fell silent. To be honest, they all liked the talisman, but there were indeed many puzzles within it. They looked at Anduin intently, eager for answers. First of all, let me formally introduce to you the contents of the Silver Flash Talisman, collectively referred to as the Hogwarts Student Information Tracking System, or System for short, Anduin began. This system is specially designed to record your growth experiences during your time at Hogwarts. Records like grades, violations, and honors will always be kept. The headmaster has jointly confirmed it. I would also like to remind you that the school is even considering whether to make your records into personnel files after graduation as supplementary materials for your future job applications. So you have to be careful. These records may accompany you for the rest of your life to some extent. After saying that, Anduin glanced at the several deans behind him, and they all nodded in agreement. In fact, this system was an idea that came up after Anduin finished the last school planning meeting. For this reason, he went back to Hogwarts and asked Dumbledore for his opinion. Dumbledore showed strong interest in the system and even participated in its construction, providing information about students from previous years for the Silver Flash Talisman. The other 4 deans naturally expressed their approval for this project, and it was Snape who even proposed the idea of compiling student records into files. But what Anduin said was easy. The faces of the young wizards present changed drastically after hearing his words, especially the senior wizards. If you make a mistake in school and get a point deducted, will it affect your future employment? Why be so harsh on us? We are just children. George and Fred turned pale with fright. They had just been bragging to Harry and the others, recounting their great achievements in front of the violation records on the screen, when they suddenly heard this thunderbolt. However, Anduin continued after taking a deep breath. Of course, this idea is still just a conjecture, and it should not be realized in the next 2 years. After all, the amount of work involved is not small. Phew, these little wizards suddenly felt relieved. Since Anduin became the new professor at Hogwarts, their psychological resilience had risen sharply. Why does this young professor like to give them surprises so often? After seeing the rich expression changes of these little wizards, Anduin also felt a little amused. He then continued, Okay, now I will introduce health status, personal attributes, and spellcasting ability in detail. Hearing Anduin mention this, everyone immediately felt relieved and looked towards the podium with high spirits. Health status represents everyone's physical condition at this time. You all underwent a detailed physical examination in the morning, so what is recorded in the system is your physical examination result. At the same time, the Silver Flash Talisman is also. The system is enchanted with self-testing magic. Based on your current health status, any illness or injury will be displayed immediately. So, don't even think about falsely claiming that you are sick or injured to skip class. The system will verify the authenticity for you. In the Personal Attribute S section, there are 5 major categories: physique, strength, agility, intelligence, and magic value. The star rating for physique is a comprehensive evaluation of your basic physical fitness, influenced by factors such as health status, muscle and bone strength, and endurance. Strength, as the name suggests, is determined by all your data during the strength test. Agility is a comprehensive assessment of your movement speed, sense of balance, and reaction time. These ratings are primarily based on the data collected during the physical examination and the subjective judgment of the medical examiner. There may be some discrepancies, but the personnel conducting your physical examination have been specially trained by me, so the margin of error will not be significant. As for intelligence, Anduin smiled slightly as he continued. Everyone should remember what I explained to you this morning. Intelligence can be directly regarded as magic sensitivity. The star rating represents your ability to perceive and control magic power and has nothing to do with your IQ. Oh, everyone suddenly realized what Anduin meant. They had wondered how he could know their IQs before. It turned out he was referring to magic sensitivity. They also recalled that the medical examiner had tested this attribute. While this attribute cannot achieve precise values like the magic power value, it largely depends on the subjective judgment of the medical examiner. However, the testing equipment developed by Anduin makes it easier to observe the person being inspected, so the rating accuracy is still very high. Finally, the mana value represents your mana reserves. If you have read my book, Tactical Training, you should understand that each unit of mana means you can cast a luminescent spell once. The higher your mana value, the more spells you can cast at one time, Anduin explained concisely. End of this chapter. Chapter 6 and 39, Levels, Seeking Recommendations, and Monthly Votes. Hearing Anduin's explanation, many academic wizards, including Hermione, nodded in understanding. They had read Tactical Training before school started and knew that this was the standard established by Anduin. For physique, strength, and agility, these 3 attributes mainly represent physical fitness. Even if you don't do special training, as long as you take in enough nutrients, you will grow with your physical development, Anduin began. Generally speaking, if the attributes of freshmen are normal, they should be rated at SOS. Theoretically, 2nd graders will grow to FOS, 3rd graders to POS, and so on. By the time a 7th grader is about to graduate, these 3 attributes should be at SPOR-slots. After the age of 17, a wizard's body basically stops developing. If there is no professional training, these values will remain largely unchanged. Of course, depending on individual developmental levels, everyone's rating will vary slightly. Some precocious individuals might reach FOS by the age of 15 or 16. So in the corresponding age group, if your attribute is higher or lower than the normal value, you will receive a special evaluation. For example, 1st graders should normally be at FOS. If you already have SUCS or SES, it means you have surpassed your peers in those qualities. Under normal circumstances, 3rd grade students should reach PUS smaller, so their evaluation would be considered normal. Only when they exceed this value can they receive a higher evaluation. In fact, the magic value is also related to these 3 attributes. The stronger your physical fitness, the higher your magic value will be. The difference is that it will gradually increase with age, and there is no theoretical upper limit, though it varies from person to person. Anduin emphasized, intelligence is the most special item among personal attributes. What affects it is your perception and understanding of magic power. Unlike other attributes, it does not increase with age, but only with the improvement of your spellcasting level. In other words, the more proficient you are in mastering spells and understanding magic, the higher your intelligence will be. A normal wizard's intelligence upon graduation, or magic sensitivity, is about. After graduation, if you continue to cast spells frequently or undergo special training, it may still improve, otherwise it will solidify. So, as long as you complete your studies normally and graduate successfully, Everyone's personal attributes should be around +, with intelligence roughly around. But that's far from enough, Anduin declared, changing his tone. My obligation, generally speaking, is to teach you tactical training, but to put it bluntly, it is to improve your personal attributes as much as possible, especially intelligence. My goal is for you to achieve at least 5-star, 6-star, 7-star, or even higher average attributes by the time you graduate. To help you achieve this goal, I will not be lenient. Be mentally prepared. After hearing Anduin's rhetoric, the young wizards present had mixed feelings. First, seeing the attributes displayed by the system gave them a clear understanding of their own conditions. Digitizing their physical fitness made everyone eager to improve. This is similar to many people playing games. The higher the level, the better. These young wizards shared this sentiment, with some even having a very strong will to improve. However, the second half of Anduin's words were a bit intimidating. What did he mean by, "I won't be lenient"? What exactly was he planning to do to them? Especially after witnessing Anduin's actions in the morning, everyone began to feel a sense of trepidation. The psychological shadow loomed over him. However, if no one is interested in the goals proposed by Anduin or infected by his aura, then some deception might be involved. The young wizards were conflicted, feeling a mix of anticipation and fear. In this emotional atmosphere, Anduin continued his explanation. After discussing personal attributes, I will now introduce spellcasting ability to everyone, Anduin began. Students beyond their first year should see all the spells they have mastered so far recorded in the spellcasting ability column, along with their corresponding levels. The division of these spell levels is based on the theory of casting proficiency and magic conversion rate mentioned in my book, Tactical Training. Everyone should understand that to cast a spell successfully, accurate gestures and incantations are required. As we learn and use these spells over time, we find that some spells can be performed by simplifying or even ignoring gestures. As we progress further, we might not even need incantations, evolving into silent casting. Eventually, we could even cast spells without a wand. This progression is due to our deep understanding of the spells, allowing us to integrate them without fully understanding their rune structures. This is what we call spellcasting proficiency. The higher the proficiency, the smoother, faster, and stronger the spellcasting becomes, with lower magic power consumption. Academically, this is referred to as a higher magic power conversion rate. I have divided spellcasting proficiency into 5 specific levels. The first level is entry, symbolizing that you can cast spells correctly using gestures and incantations. Like this, Anduin pulled out his wand and pointed it at a cup on the student's long table. Wingardium Leviosa. With the correct gestures and incantation, the copper cup floated gently. Everyone focused on the metal cup, captivated by Anduin's demonstration. This is a simple levitation spell. As you become more proficient, you can omit some redundant parts of the casting action, making the spell faster and smoother. This is the second level. Anduin then flicked his wand quickly and uttered a short incantation, so fast that many couldn't catch it. As he cast the spell, he lifted several items on the long table into the air. My speed just now might have been too fast. Reaching this level isn't necessary to achieve level 2 proficiency. Most of you here should be at level 2, meaning you have successfully mastered the spell. If you were to take an exam, you could score at least an A or E. Anduin hadn't slowed his spellcasting speed for a long time, so he instinctively used skills beyond level 2. Judging by the reactions of the young wizards, they seemed to understand. Next is the third level of spells. At this level, you should be able to cast spells very proficiently, even without gestures, using only incantations or none at all. At this level, you can easily achieve an O rating in the relevant spell test. Raising your spell level to level 3 is a primary goal for everyone at Hogwarts. After speaking, Anduin raised his wand lightly, lifting several objects into the air without using gestures or speaking. At this level, you can even practice advanced spellcasting techniques to enhance the spell's effectiveness. One of the most famous and practical techniques is Barnabas Finkley's 7 major spellcasting techniques, which include accumulating spells, hiding spells, and pulling spells. Fast and slow spells, cursing spells, multiple casting spells, and curses to the ground, Anduin began. Of course, I will teach you these spellcasting techniques in the upcoming courses. However, you must first understand that only when your spell level reaches level 3 can you begin to learn these advanced techniques. After Anduin's explanation, the young wizards exchanged excited glances. The prospect of learning spellcasting techniques sounded far more intriguing than their usual charm lessons. However, they couldn't help but wonder how long it would take to reach the 3rd level spell proficiency that the professor mentioned. Curious, the students took out their silver flash amulets to check their current spell levels. They quickly realized that they had a long way to go. According to Anduin, the only way to increase their spell levels was through frequent practice, which meant it would take considerable time to elevate all their spells to level 3. Professor, we've learned so many spells. Isn't it very difficult to improve them all? Should we focus on specializing in a few spells instead? A Ravenclaw student asked, raising his hand. That's an excellent question, Anduin replied with a nod of approval. Indeed, an ordinary 3rd-year student has the opportunity to learn dozens of spells, and it is challenging to raise them all to level 3. However, that doesn't mean there aren't strategies to help you. The room fell silent as everyone eagerly awaited Anduin's advice. The simplest way is to improve your intelligence attributes. The higher your magic sensitivity, the easier it will be for you to understand and master spells. Therefore, enhancing your intelligence will boost your learning efficiency, Anduin explained. Additionally, different wizards have different affinities. You might have noticed that some spells come naturally to you, while others are more difficult to grasp. The younger students seemed uncertain, but the older wizards nodded in agreement. They had already observed that they could master certain types of magic surprisingly quickly, as if they were born to learn them. In contrast, other enchantments required much more effort and time to cast successfully. End of this chapter. Chapter 640, Level 5 Curse. This is the magic adaptability theory involving different wizards, which I also discuss in my book, Tactical Training. Each wizard has varying adaptability to different types of magic. Some excel in transfiguration, while others find guardian charms easier to learn. This means everyone has a unique magical personality. Of course, although this theory has been discovered, it is still under research. Currently, there is no way to detect which types of spells are most suitable for you, so this aspect requires personal experience. To improve your spellcasting level, you should start with simple spells. This is my suggestion. Additionally, increasing your magic sensitivity can help balance your adaptability. In short, if you want to quickly enhance your spellcasting level, you should focus on increasing your intelligence attribute as much as possible. Anduin smiled at everyone. He had summoned all the students in the school today. Apart from introducing the system, his main goal was to increase everyone's interest in tactical training. After all, this course is quite challenging, and without interest, they might not persevere. He also prepared various work-rest plans for the class, hoping to help them find enjoyment even in hardship. Anduin was very self-aware. He couldn't expect everyone to be as self-disciplined as he was. At this time, the thoughts of the little wizards present were slowly changing under Anduin's guidance. Their desire to improve their attributes and levels gradually overshadowed their fear of tactical training. Professor, you haven't explained the last 2 levels yet. Is there anything special of the 4th and 5th level spells? Hermione, sitting in the front row, raised her right hand high, her eyes full of anticipation for future learning. The 4th and 5th levels. Anduin smiled slightly at her question. These 2 levels of spells are still relatively far off for you. It is much more difficult to upgrade from level 3 to level 4 than from level 2 to level 3, but I can still give you a brief demonstration. First of all, reaching the 4th level of a spell means that casting the spell has become instinctive. The most obvious feature is that you are no longer bound by the wand or the incantation when casting the spell. In other words, you can cast spells without a wand and without speaking. Secondly, a level 4 spell requires sufficient spirit, that is, the support of willpower, to have enough strength. Using the levitation charm as an example, it looks something like this. Anduin raised his left hand slightly and nodded towards the Slytherin house on the left. The dozen or so wizards sitting in front of the Slytherin table suddenly felt light all over. Everyone in the auditorium watched as they slowly floated up, as if they had entered a zero-gravity environment. Seeing this, not only the little wizards in front of them, but also the 4 deans behind Anduin were dumbfounded. They didn't expect Anduin to master such a simple spell as the levitation charm to this extent. It is important to note that levitating creatures consume significantly more magic power than controlling objects. The dozen or so wizards floating in the air were initially startled, but after getting used to the environment, they found it quite fun and started swimming in the air. However, Anduin didn't have time to let them play for long. After a brief demonstration, he gently put everyone down. When you reach the level 4 spell, you will have a feeling of doing whatever you want when casting the spell. Once you have mastered this level, you can also apply this skill to other spells. Therefore, wizards who have mastered level 4 spellcasting skills are quite exceptional. It's impressive for an adult wizard to master 1 or 2 level 4 spells. It's so cool! Everyone watched in awe as Anduin effortlessly cast his spells. They couldn't help but feel a longing in their hearts. When would they be able to master such powerful magic? What about the level 5 spell? Herme, 1, equally envious of Anduin's demonstration, couldn't wait to ask. Level 5 spell. Anduin noted Hermione's intense thirst for knowledge. It was surprising that such a curious child was sorted into Gryffindor instead of Ravenclaw. When a spell reaches level 5, it undergoes a qualitative change. First, the magic power conversion rate exceeds 0.8, meaning the spellcasting efficiency is very high. Secondly, the intensity is significantly higher, often several times that of a standard spell. Finally, it can achieve functions that the original spell could not. Anduin raised his hand gently. He floated into the air under everyone's watchful eyes. At the same time, all the young wizards in the auditorium felt their bodies lighten and were slowly lifted into the air. That's impossible! Before the young wizards could marvel, Professor Flitwick, standing behind Anduin, widened his eyes. The levitation spell shouldn't affect the caster. You're right, Anduin nodded. Ordinary levitation spells work that way, but a level 5 levitation spell breaks that limit. Any spell, even a simple one, becomes extraordinary when studied to level 5. Extraordinary spells? Flitwick's expression changed. Although he was a charms professor and knew dozens of spells, he had never encountered a level 5 spell. It's amazing. Flitwick couldn't help but admire Anduin's performance. You've surpassed me in the exploration of charms. Level 5 spells, it seems I have a new goal. How can a spell reach level 5? Professor McGonagall, standing next to Flitwick, couldn't help but ask. It was the first time she had heard of this concept. Well, Anduin smiled awkwardly. To be honest, I haven't fully grasped the path to level 5 spells. The few level 5 spells I know were all learned by accident or through sudden insight. He wasn't lying. He could only truly call 4 spells level 5. The levitation spell, the obstacle spell, the wild thunder spell, and the fitness spell. The first 3 were learned through unintentional epiphanies, while the wild thunder spell was naturally achieved when he was tempered by lightning. The fitness spell, which had recently reached level 5, was still a mystery to him. It seemed to have naturally evolved, perhaps due to his body's transformation by wild thunder, his well-nourished diet, and the vitality he absorbed during his travels in America. But if he had to explain how to upgrade a spell to level 5, Anduin couldn't provide a clear answer. Did you realize it by accident? I think I have some inspiration. Flitwick, with his years of experience, seemed to grasp some clues from Anduin's words. He felt a sense of understanding, but couldn't fully grasp it. While Anduin discussed the levels of magic with the professors, the young wizards who had been lifted into the air were still in a panic. Hundreds of them were floating with just a wave of Anduin's hand. As you lift your head, you will see people levitating in various peculiar poses. Ha! This feels amazing. I want to practice the levitation charm until I reach level 5 too, George exclaimed, thoroughly enjoying himself. However, he soon realized it wasn't working as intended. He resorted to pushing and shoving with Fred, who was next to him, to move around in the air. Didn't you hear what our older brother said? It's not easy to master the levitation charm to level 5. I think we should aim for level 4 first. If we can make each other float in the air, wouldn't that achieve the same effect? Fred suggested, laughing and joking with George. That's a brilliant idea, George agreed, his face lighting up with a smile. While the two were chattering away, Ron grabbed Harry's arm, his face pale. Merlin's beard, this is too high. When will the professor put us down? Don't be afraid. This is the professor's spell. He won't hurt us. Look, even the Slytherin students are fine, Harry reassured Ron. He hadn't expected Ron to be afraid of heights. Harry himself enjoyed the feeling of freedom that came with being in the sky. After chatting with several professors, Anduin finally remembered that he was still holding hundreds of wizards in the air. He quickly manipulated the levitation spell to lower everyone slowly. Once everyone had returned to their seats, Anduin resumed his lecture. Level 5 spells are still too advanced for most of you. Students below the 5th grade should focus on mastering a few level 3 spells. Senior students can try to upgrade 1 or 2 spells to level 4. And remember to always carry your Silver Flash amulet. The system will update your honor, grades, and violation records in real time. Changes in attributes and levels will primarily depend on physical examinations. I will arrange an inspection every 6 months to update everyone's attributes. Additionally, if I notice any changes in your attributes during teaching or in daily life, I will follow up. For those who want to track their progress more frequently, I will accept applications for tests every 2 months. You can decide whether to update your attributes and levels. Anduin's arrangement was thorough, addressing all potential issues. End of this chapter.